You bet. It had to.
Yeah.
Well, good for you.
You should definitely recognize my sarcasm.
I do. I didn't realize.
There's only a few things that are not even controversial, but I think we're all in agreement. But they're good. So I want to try and get those done while you're here. And anything that comes up that's controversial, if you've already left, I'm not going to backdoor anybody. I'm not going to push anything through with a partial.
You with me, all of us, I respect all the issues.
I understand you. Yeah.
I've heard the boat moves.
Too much. And that's a shame, but that's the way it is.
It's the way it is. It's too small for me.
And waste our time on stuff that's well, that's not good.
Well, you take care. It's the same.
Well, exactly.
But of course, I will defer to the other committee. You know that.
We all would.
You know.
Caution is wise. Army candy. So.
I'm wet, man. Tired.
I saw a documentary.
Absolutely, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today is May 12th, 2022. Welcome to the City Commission meeting. Roll call is Heather Rutledge, Roger Eckert, Jim Connell, Cameron Lane, City Administrator, City Attorney are all present. Commissioner Basso is not present this evening. Is there a pastor in the house? No. Okay, so are you a pastor? Well, the reason I ask is we generally have a pastor that shows up on Wednesday to do the legislative. We have a pastor that shows up to do the legislative prayer prior to the meeting, or at the beginning of the meeting. Would you like to do that? I know we haven't spoken with you about that. Okay. Just if you would open us in the meeting in prayer, that would be great.
I'll just stay right here.
Or you can come up, if you would come up to the microphone, that would be great. I don't usually just throw it out to anybody, but I'm glad you're here. Sometimes I don't get introduced to the pastor who's been assigned.
All right, I'm Pastor Catholic, first congregation.
Can you pull that a little closer to you?
Oh, yeah, I'm perfect. Gracious and holy God, we give you thanks for the opportunity to come together this evening as the people of this community. Be with us this evening as we conduct our business. May we do it in a way that is productive, fruitful, and kind. Will you take us then in safety from this place until we meet again? In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Connell, would you lead us in the?
Gladly, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Sorry to spring that on you. Thank you for coming. Are there any additions or deletions or modifications to the agenda?
I added the emails as part of 12A.
The email? Okay.
Part of 12A.
Okay, thank you. I would like to add an item 6D for some discussion about the Lake Festival and the map that they're going to be presenting.
6B,
6D is in David.
6D, yes, sir.
Okay.
The map presentation's on your copy, it just wasn't on here.
Oh, which letter is it on the D? Oh, it is D as well. Good. So, number 5, approval of minutes. We have a motion to approve the minutes as presented, or is there any discussion?
Make a motion to approve with the additions noted by Commissioner Eckert and Mayor Lane.
I have a motion by Vice Mayor Kyle, second by Commissioner Rutledge to approve the minutes. All in favor? Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Move on to presentation to the commission. We have a proclamation for the Lake Helen United Methodist Church, which I would like to read at this time. Whereas the Lake Helen United Methodist Church was organized on June 12, 1922, with 49 charter members. And whereas donations of money and labor from residents throughout the community resulted in the construction of the original wood frame church, affectionately referred to as the Big Barn. And whereas the congregation persevered through troubling times of the 1930s and 40s with a small group of faithful attendants keeping the church alive. And whereas the 1950s and 60s brought increased membership and revival to the church, resulting in vast improvements to the church's exterior and interior. And whereas the congregation has continued to grow and prosper. Whereas the church and its members have always been an integral part of the Lake Helen community. And now therefore the City Commission is proud to celebrate and recognize the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Lake Helen United Methodist Church. In testimony whereof the City Commission of the City of Lake Helen have hereunto set our hands and caused it to be affixed the Great Seal of the City of Lake Helen in the state of Florida this 12th day of May 2022. Congratulations, Lake Helen Methodist Church, for making it through 100 years.
Thank you. Thank you.
Never knew it was called the Big Barn.
Yeah.
The Big Barn?
The Big Barn. I didn't hear that until I read
Never
this
knew
as well.
that. Yeah.
100 years is definitely something to be celebrated.
Indeed.
Now we have a proclamation from Commissioner Eckert.
Proclamation, whereas it is the honor of the City Commission to express support for the designation of May 27, 2022 as National Poppy Day in the City of Lake Helen, and recognizing the importance of honoring those that have worn our nation's uniform. And whereas poppies are worn and displayed as a symbolic tribute to our fallen and the future of living veterans and service members. And whereas at the end of World War I, the American Legion adopted the poppy as a symbol of freedom and the blood sacrificed by troops in wartime. And whereas the use of the poppy symbolically comes from the poem In Flanders Fields, which movingly begins, in Flanders Fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, road on road, referring to the poppies that sprang up in the churned earth of battlefields across Belgium and France where soldiers died fighting. And whereas the American Legion family has long utilized the red poppy as its official flower, symbolizing the blood shed by those who have served in our U.S. military, and they expand the meaning and symbolism of the poppy, mirroring the manner in which the poppy is symbolically showcased in England and Canada in celebratory fashion on their Remembrance Day, also known as Armistice Day and Poppy Day. And whereas wearing a poppy will unite citizens from across the country who decide to show their patriotism. And now therefore, the City Commission supports the designation of May 27th as National Poppy Day and encourages all citizens, residents, and visitors within the City of Lake Helen to join in observing this day to honor every service member who has died in the name of liberty, freedom, and democracy, while also showing their support for living veterans, service members, and their families. In testimony thereof, the City Commission of Lake Helen have hereunto set our hands and caused to be fixed the Great Seal of the City of Lake Helen in the state of Florida this 12th day of May 2022.
And now, is Mr. Justin Sanders here? Did you come forward, sir? I believe we have a presentation concerning the Boys and Girls Club. Thank you. If you could kind of get by the mic so we can have it for the minutes and state your name, that'd be great.
So my name is Justin Sanders, and I am the program director over at the Florida Youth Lake Boys and Girls Club. I have been over there for about 7 years now. Started off as a volunteer essentially and kind of worked my way up. I personally wanted to take this time out to kind of formally introduce ourselves to you, as well as put ourselves back out in the community, because it has been a long time between COVID and everything that's happened. And we used to be a very important part of the Lake County community. We service anywhere between 60, 70, and even sometimes 80 kids, 80 youth a day. We only charge $25 for the entire school year. We are a nonprofit organization. We get most of our funding through government programs like Department of Education or Department of Juvenile Justice. And I personally, and I'm sure you guys probably have seen me outside running games with the children outside and whatnot. So first off, great to meet you, sir.
Thank you for being here.
No problem. We just kind of look at market ourselves out there. If you want to swing by and see what the club is about, you know, we're always out there right next to the police station, running games, running programs about healthy eating, you know, drug prevention, handling your emotions, all that stuff. And with me, I have what we would call our Youth of the Year. So we run a national program where every year we select one youth from our club, along with other clubs like their own, who we feel best represent our club's values. And through that, they kind of speak on the experience of the club and how it's impacted them. And this young lady here is Ava, and she has been coming to the club as long as I have been working there. So I've known her for a very long time. And I just think to kind of help set the example and give you an idea of what we're about, I thought she could say a few words about her experience at the club. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Ava Guffin, and I have been almost doing this stuff since I was in the second grade. A soon to be graduating high school, that is a long time. And I had no clue where I would be if I did not go to this club. I'd probably be known as park kids walking around making breakfast, honestly. My brother is really much and he has improved in his grades and in his ability at home and his manners. Really have helped us so much. And
And hi, thank you for the community, and just want to introduce ourselves to you. And I'm Yvette Roman, the unit director of the Boys and Girls Club. A lot of you guys know Mr. Chance, he's still with us. He just supervises all the clubs now, or a great portion of them. So I have taken his place in the city, and welcome and thank you for everything that you do for us.
Mr. Sanders. Mr. Sanders, me. My name is Jim Tom. Good evening. And thank you for coming out tonight. Was it you that I gave your cell phone back to you during the Christmas party?
Yes.
I thought that was you. I'm so glad that we found the owner right then and there. And that's one of the first time I met you was when you lost your phone.
Yeah, honestly, with all the kids running around during that Christmas.
I wish I could take credit for that. I can't. I was just the MC. So Karen was running the Christmas deal there. I thought you gave it to me. So just wanted to connect again. So thank you.
I appreciate it.
Well, Justin and Yvette, it's nice to meet you, and Ava, thank you for that wonderful testimony. That was tremendous. Really appreciate that. And glad to re-engage with you after COVID. I know that threw a loop into everybody. So, welcome back. I'm sure you've been here all along in many ways, so welcome back.
Yeah.
Okay, item D, Lake Festival and Hydrologic Map. Who would like to speak for the lake?
hi, Joy Taylor.
the president of Lake Home League for Better Living, and I have with me here tonight some of the members of the Lake Committee and the League who are also in attendance to tell you all thank you. We so appreciate the support for Lake Festival. It was a great time this year. We all had a lot of fun. It was wonderful to see those of you out there who can make it, and we look forward to next year so much. We're already planning. And we, as a gift, Mark, can you turn this to the commission if you see it? We wanted to give y'all a copy of this surface water hydrology map that Alex Linsky's company, Clearview Geographics, made for the Lake Committee. And while we had a copy, when we saw it, we saw how wonderful and valuable this data was. It immediately became urgent to us to ensure that our city had a copy as well. So we purchased this map for y'all and had your city logo put on it, as well as the Lake Committee logo, so that you could remember how much we appreciate it. And we hope that you'll hang it in the city chambers with the other beautiful maps we have of our city. And Alex is going to share a bit with you about the data on the map so that you know what you're getting.
Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. The big takeaway from the map is you've got kind of two different data layers, combination of layers in there. The elevation is kind of what you're seeing from white to red to yellow to green, and that represents areas that are high ground and low ground. The blue areas are major wetland areas, and that's sourced from the National Wetland Inventory, various land cover data sets that are around the state, some rough photo interpretation. So it's not necessarily something you can take permitting because it's not a wetland delineation, that kind of thing. But I had made this map to really act as a teaching tool for the Lake Festival. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it, but with that being said, the main takeaway is everything that we do on our land, whether it be in Lake Helen or anywhere, eventually the kind of byproducts of that, whether it be building houses, cutting your lawn, washing your car, or managing agricultural lands, forests, water bodies, that kind of thing, eventually ends up downhill. So it's kind of intended to just make people aware of how Lake Helen's hydrology kind of interacts with the landscape and the elevations in the area. And yeah, just I would say that the most important part is to be conscious of what you're doing on your land, because it ends up in our water. So one thing that I would like to congratulate the city on is more sustainable, less destructive management practices, thinking specifically about the lake management plan that was recently kind of commissioned there. And I know the kind of the fight to get to that less destructive practice has been a long battle for some. And I appreciate all the effort that's gone into that. And it's just a general ask for everybody to focus on that part of kind of ecological management and keep up the good fight and protect the water.
Thank you very much. I wanted to, yeah, go ahead. I wanted to say thank you to the Lake Committee for the wonderful festival y'all put on. It was tremendous. It really was. I went, and I think everybody was there, had a wonderful time. Was very impressed with the amount of information and data that was there. In so many ways, it was wonderfully presented. The fights that we've had in the city have all been different ways we want to love this lake and this city. So yeah, we've had some knockdown dragouts, if you will, but it's all been born of love for the lake. We appreciate how much y'all do for it and how much you do for the pride and for our namesake here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's more to come from the Lake Committee. Since a lot of their goals initially have been achieved, they're actually in the process of redefining new goals. So once they've reached those, they now redefining. And they'll be sharing that with the city and the community more, but a lot of that focus is going to be on educational outreach and creating more media and tools that we can use and the city can utilize for educational outreach. And so we'll have lots to look forward to.
Thank you very much. I absolutely believe that there's no silver bullet to this. This is a management. We've got a lake that we'll have forever if we're good to it forever. That's an ongoing maintenance and mindset that you're helping us to maintain. I appreciate that. We'll be right there with you.
We appreciate you. We have a lot of passionate people on the Lake Committee who care deeply about the work that they can do for the last 4 years.
Indeed, it shows. It shows. Commissioner.
I appreciate the hydrology report because it is very important for another subject we're going to be discussing tonight. When we get into the subject issue, it has a very big impact on hydrology. I like that report.
Yeah, I would echo Commissioner Eckert's comments as well too. I was able to take quite a few minutes in front of that map and talking with several experts. And, certainly did appreciate the data. It is very clear. It's very easy to see how that flows from north to south and kind of that diagonal there as well too. So thank you very much and appreciate your input. And again, I would echo the information. It really helped me a lot to understand how the hydrology of that works. Actually, I had a question too at that point in time. Perhaps you can answer that now. Was there a possibility to go back in time further with that hydrology map? Is it?
Yes, absolutely.
Is there?
It's, I would say it's more of a photo interpretation part of it.
I see.
But with that being said, you have had historic areas as far back as the 40s that I have access to.
Do you feel that might help this commission to understand some of the hydrology even further, to have a timeline in the past maybe 10, 15 years?
Yes, because the groundwater is very inextricably linked with surface water. And you get kind of an insight in what was lost, what we filled in, and kind of what's been altered, so we know from then moving forward kind of what to do afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Another layer that Alex and I were talking about that would be interesting would be that might be useful for the city, especially if you're talking about the stormwater reports, would be to have a map that looked at the pervious versus impervious surfaces and calculated some percentages in particular to roads and understanding the way the water flows and the way that interacts with your pervious versus impervious. So that's something else that maybe the city might like to, sidebar with Alex on afterwards.
And that can be further expanded if you've got any data on stormwater infrastructure around the city. All that can be linked together. I do hydrologic modeling for South Florida quite a bit. So.
Yeah, I think for me, I'll bring it up to staff for after the commission meeting. Certainly not something we were talking about right now present, but thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
I just wanted to show my appreciation to this commission and the previous commission for the direction that we went and we're staying in without the excessive spraying, because where we're at now, the lake is beautiful. So thank you. And all the hard work that everyone has put in, that rally against the herbicide, I think that allows us to see that there was difference and that we can make the difference. And those options are proven to be shown. So thank you for all those.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Before you go to the next topic, the American Legion would like to receive a copy of the Poppy Day proclamation photo together for the record.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, you wanted to receive a copy of
They
it?
would like to be presented a copy of the proclamation for their records and photo.
Okay, we are still lacking one commissioner's signature. Since
They understand that.
since Mr. Bassett is here, but
They
they're
already
right
did
here.
a presentation.
Okay. You want to do that now? I'm not understanding your question.
That would be appreciated, so we can get a picture.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Where did Dawn go?
She was here a second ago.
She hates being put in front of the public while she can talk, but.
I was gonna say. Does she need to be here for this picture?
Not really, no. She's
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
I wanted to make one more small announcement that didn't really make it an agenda item, but we did receive an email concerning the avian flu that is rampant apparently. I know there have been numerous cases, well over 100 in Volusia County. If you see a dead bird in town, let Public Works know they've received some training on how to safely deal with it. It doesn't take much, just wear gloves and don't be stupid. But the dead birds should be dealt with and disposed of so they don't continue to spread and propagate the avian flu. So please let us know if you see a dead bird in the city. We'll help handle that. And there is possible transmission to humans, but it's very unlikely. Again, just don't be stupid, wash your hands, wear gloves, that kind of thing. All right, consent agenda, acceptance of paid bills report. And consent agenda, do I have a motion for that?
I have a question first.
Certainly.
Thank you, sir. City Administrator, Mr. Evatt, help me understand all the checks to biometric. I'm sure it's closeout, but help me understand for the record what all those checks are.
It's an interesting question. Biometric in the process of transferring from biometric to U.S. Water, they had a series of invoices they presented to us. They covered about 3 or 4 months, probably back. But we did not have backup for the invoices. We only had the invoices. We didn't have anything evidencing that they had done the work. They said they had the evidence, back and forth, so we finally agreed to be in the middle of the bridge, and they would give us the evidence and give them a check.
Is that right?
And we did that, and we had the evidence that what they said they would do was due. They got the check, and
You thought that was in the best interest of the city at the time, I suppose?
it's where we had several problems, basically. We couldn't pay without the evidence.
What would have been the alternative?
Not paying.
And then what?
They pursued us. And then we would have said, but you didn't give us the evidence. And the judge would have said, you're right. At least that's my interpretation of the shots. So we did what we needed to do, which was we needed the evidence, we got the evidence. What they were claiming was in fact accomplished, and we paid them accordingly. Why it's such a big number is simply because it's about 4 months worth of invoices, not just 1 month.
It wasn't an invoice of opportunity, was it?
It wasn't
Opportunity, it wasn't an invoice of opportunity on biometrics part, you
They
believe?
have presented one of those, and we finally refused to pay it. There's absolutely no reason we should pay it. There's been no work accomplished and no work authorized.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation and that question. It's a good question. And that explanation, I understand, got to protect ourselves. If somebody's leaving, we don't want to have that be an opportunity.
Yeah, I would really like to be sure that we're done and clean, that there is no future liability, any future invoice at all. This would then, I assume then, sir, this is it, done with biometrics?
We'll have to pay them for May. For the current month, they're still with us until June 1st.
Until June 1st.
And that would be it. Then we still have that invoice which they gave us, and then it withdrew, but I know it's still out there somewhere. They may want to make a claim for that, but unless they can present evidence of the work, we can't pay it.
After that, Scott.
I don't know if anyone, Scott's been in on this conversation the whole time.
Yeah, obviously your professional liability and your professional accountability is so far fine with me. I just wanted to get an idea of all that money going out, and it's rather disconcerting that there was 4 months of invoices there presented all at one time. That obviously is a big red light to me as a businessman. So either they were reticent upon providing the invoice or upon the termination of the vendor to the city, that all of a sudden these invoices became. So, sir, I'm holding you responsible then to make sure that we pay these properly and fiduciarily as well then too.
Absolutely. That's why we couldn't pay it, I'm getting.
Well, we've had some discussion, do I have a motion about the pay bills report?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion from Vice Mayor Connell, and a second from Commissioner Eckert to accept the bills paid report. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And we'll quickly move to the quasi judicial hearing. All said quasi judicial hearing to order. We have items A through F before us. Do I have a motion concerning the quasi judicial certificate of appropriateness? Oh, good point. Has there been any ex parte communication on any of these items by the commission?
I've had no conversation, sir.
None.
None. Okay, so thank you for that reminder. And again, I need a motion.
I make a motion to approve E through F without nay. Or maybe approve to accept their recommendations.
A second. I have a motion from Commissioner Rutledge, a second from Commissioner Eckert to accept the recommendation of the Historic Preservation Board on items B through F to approve their certificate of appropriateness. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. That leaves us with item A for 376 West Washington Avenue, where the Historic Preservation Board recommended denial. Do I have a motion for that? Sure. Yeah, I'll call it, are you involved? I will definitely hear you. We just need a motion to start discussion.
Oh, okay.
No, I won't steamroll over you, don't worry. Everyone shall be heard, who wants to be heard. Do I have a motion for item A?
I make a motion to follow recommendation of.
Okay, we have a motion to follow the recommendation of the Historic Preservation Board. Do I have a second? Second. Motion from Commissioner Rutledge, a second from Commissioner Eckert to follow the recommendation of the Historic Preservation Board and deny the request from 376 West Washington Avenue. Sir, did you want to speak to us concerning that? This would be appropriate. Yes, absolutely. Please come forward. If you would give us your name, and once you get up to the microphone, give us your name and.
Yes, I'm Roy Johnson. My wife and I own the property, plan on building the house, or we're planning on building the house there. And I thought I had a reasonable chance of having this house approved based on previous homes that have front load garages, and that's what they turned the house down on. I went and looked at, I built a couple of homes in the woods as well. And I went through the woods and basically took pictures of all the houses that were fairly recent that had front load garages, and I presented it to the board. There was nine homes, not counting the ones that were pretty much original up towards Main Street. And they looked at the pictures, and evidently somebody had a laptop up there at the prehistoric meeting, and they determined that all the houses were approved prior to this code change. So kind of got shut down the water for that. And then when I went home and I'm looking through the pictures and I don't find one of the houses in there. So I counted the pictures, I gave them 9 and got 8 back. And so I realized which house it is that I did not receive back. And it's a house that is just now being delivered. It may have just been delivered. And so the next morning I went in and I asked Debbie in the permit office if she would check and see when that house was approved. And that house was approved on April the 8th by the historic board. And it was approximately 3 months after the code had changed. I do not know why the house was approved, nor anything really about it. But this is the approval letter here if you want to see it. And would you want to see it?
If you could hand that to the,
Tommy?
down.
Now, if you have the picture of the house that we are planning or we're planning on building, it is very similar to that house. It's totally different, but it's still similar. It's a colonial style house with the front load garage. Now, the lot is on the other end of West Washington. And the problem with the lot is that on the left property line is a storm drain. The center of that drain is on the line. So if I were to put a side load garage there, that driveway would have to come over approximately 15 feet to clear the storm drain, which means the house would have to be moved over accordingly. Because you don't want to come down your driveway and hit that thing. So when you do that, the right side of the lot is low. It's probably the lowest spot in the woods. The house to the right was moved all the way to the right to get it up on higher ground. This house should be moved far much to the left. If I move it to the left, then my driveway and garage are going to be on the lowest spot on the lot, which means it's going to be sitting on a bunch of fill. And I'm not putting my concrete drive, or for either for me or customer, on fill. That much fill. Not the garage or the driveway. Eventually, concrete cracks anyways, but you put it on fill, even though it's been compacted, the best you can, it's still going to crack more than if it didn't have the fill. It was on virgin soil. So the lot really predicts what should happen. Now, I read the code at that meeting, and one thing that wasn't mentioned, at least the mics don't work very good in those meetings as they do here. It's very hard to hear. I do not recall hearing anything about an exception. And in that code, one of the last paragraphs in that code, it does say that the land can cause a modification to be granted. And that's where I thought we were could reasonably expect an approval. So that's what our case is the lot does dictate. Let's say we change the house, where you've got a side load garage, the garage built into the house in the back, like a lot of the homes are. You still have to move it to the left if you don't want to put your garage down in the hole. So no matter what house I build there, I'm going to have that same problem. And then this house, just showing you now, why was that granted?
Sorry to say something, I don't need to interrupt you, I'm sorry.
Well, I did ask the only person that really, that I got any kind of answer. I asked a lot of people about why they thought it was granted. But Mark, who is our building inspector, he was telling me that he thought that the house didn't fit to have it with a side load garage. And that's all he knew. Okay, so beyond that, I don't know. And then my next question would be, which I don't know if you folks can give me an answer or not, what would it take to have an exception? I mean, if you have a spot where you're kind of limited to where you could put your driveway, so you're on virgin soil, or at least close to it, if that's the only place you could really do it, isn't that grounds for granting that exception?
Good question. Very reasonable question. Okay, are you, I'm not dismissing you forever, but is that what you wanted to present to us?
I didn't hear you, sir.
I said, I'm not dismissing you forever, you're welcome to speak again, but is that what you wanted to present to us for now?
I I still do.
You don't know if you're finished right now.
Oh, for right now, I'd like to hear some comments.
Well, we will, yes, I just didn't want to cut you off.
Yeah, I don't need to pick up any more of your time.
Okay,
No,
go right ahead. Commissioner.
So when you bought the property, were you aware of the elevations and the site slopes and all that at that time? Were you aware of that?
And
What were your preparations at that point?
the storm sewer didn't dawn on me. The property wasn't actually staked until a little bit later. I knew where approximately it was, and I did, quite honestly,
Well, thank you for sharing your honesty with us. Had you known about that, what would have changed the plan? And see, that's the crux of our decision as well, too, because it's incumbent, just the same. Correct.
I
Thank you.
understand, I understand. And by the way, I'm in favor of what Lake Ellen's done.
Thank you.
And I'm not here to fight that.
Didn't sense that.
I'm here and I'm not trying to ask for something that hasn't been granted
No,
already.
sir. Didn't sense that either. I was just curious that, had you been aware of that, what would have been the orientation of this house, or would you have purchased the property?
The way I try to work around it.
You would have tried to,
I would have tried.
to find a way.
And if I couldn't do it, I probably would have walked away if I would have given it.
Sir, I appreciate your candor and honesty. Thank you.
I would like to hear from Mr. Morales. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Commissioner Ecker.
In the need for the exemption, did you have any consultation with an engineer on, with the, exemption problem, trying to get the exemption, did you have any consultation with an engineer on the problem with the,
No, I haven't.
what would have to be done with it?
No, I just know, I've been in the building business, started when I had my first model home, when I was 27 years old. And I've made mistakes over the years, and try not to make the same mistake twice.
That's education.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. So, with the house down the street, at the end of the block, this is at the other end of the block. It was granted after the code change for a reason. It had to be for a reason because it came after the code change. I looked at that house, when I was at the historic board meeting, one of the gentlemen had suggested, well, how about if you move the garage back 12 feet? Well, then it wouldn't be detached, then it would be a detached garage, okay? But my house, the garage is 57 feet off the front property line. Okay, it's as far back as still being able to have an entrance into the house. I mean, I'm willing to put all that extra concrete in it to reach the garage. It's not like I'm trying to keep it up front, have a 25-foot driveway. It's 57 feet plus the approach.
Okay.
I just don't know, and I sure would like to know the exception.
Okay.
What it would take. That's all, if you turn me down.
That's a good question, and we will continue to discuss it and come up with an answer.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to hear from our Historic Preservation Board, Mr. Morales, if you would,
So they just want to, looks like they just want some break.
Bobby Morales, historic design consultant with the city. And thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. Very sympathetic to the applicants' claimed hardships on this particular lot. And we have consulted together a few times. I have been out to the site, and it is low on that right side. My job is to review against the code, the OC code, which is one record we did not meet code. I believe that the applicant's design professional failed them because they would have reviewed the LBC and the historic guidebooks. They would have come up with a proper solution to this.
that be the side entrance garage.
Actually, the other choice is to, if you want to front load, is to set back the garage behind the house connected with the breezeway. That is allowable per the LUC. So if he wants a front load, and that was mentioned by board members, he could move the garage back, detach it with that, and then attach it with an open breezeway to his lawn. And they would have specifically approved that.
That'd be a front-facing garage,
It
Mr.
would-
Morales, and it would
It
just
is
look.
the only condition.
So these as-built plans look to be as a continuous bearing wall between the dwelling and the garage now. So what you're suggesting there is just an open breezeway in between that with the garage pushed back. How many more feet would that add to his concrete apron?
I believe that if he's at, I think we determined that if he took that, if that garage was lined up with the back wall on the left side of the house, it was gonna be like an additional 12 feet, he'd have to move the existing garage back. And then connect it with a small breezeway. And he would then have his front row garage, that's his side entry. Others have mitigated his exact condition. One house, one block down, similar storm drainage condition, and they still did a side load. They had to swing a little bit with their driveway to come around. Not ideal, because that's how they solved the problem. I know people of my generation and older, we would probably not like that particular condition, but it has been done for the side entry and still dealing with the storm drainage.
Sir, you're standing there like you want to say something. Did you want to?
I just want to throw my 2 cents in on that.
Okay, if you would, approach. Thank you, Mr. Morales, and we may need some more help, so don't go too far away.
Ron Parrott Senior, 451 West Michigan in the woods of Lake County. When the historic board was approving some of these homes that he's referring to that have already been built to his design, that we have our own HOA, we have our architect review board. Well, the builder was the board, and he was approving those houses that went against our rules. Our rules are, what Mr. Morales just stated, if you want a front-loaded garage, it has to be the rear of the house with a breezeway. And you can see those all through the woods. The only exceptions that were put in were the builder and his secretary for the board, and they approved all his buildings. That got changed when the historic review, they came up with a pattern book and pattern for the garage.
So that what you're referring to is that builder prior to us creating a little bit stronger control of what's happening.
He absolutely did what he wanted to
Right,
do.
I understood.
Got it approved.
That's about 4 years ago.
To do a front-loaded garage, you should have the breezeway. Just following our rules for the woods.
Thank you very much for weighing in. We appreciate the information. Okay. Any commissioners have any questions, additional questions, or want any additional information from any of these presenters?
Well, I think just for discussion amongst us here, there's certainly a lot of different orientations now in the woods. And in the prior years, prior to the pattern book, the designers did the best they could within that area, and then it allowed for the one-offs that the gentleman was speaking of a minute ago, the one-offs by the builder, which created a significant amount of conflict. And as Faith came on board, the pattern book came on board. The pattern book was a pretty loosely built something in the very, very beginning, and it morphed into what we're operating under today, and it's created quite a product over there. And it's going to create product going forward when it triggers that. So now there's so many competing elevations and competing homes and competing looks that I'm afraid that a lot of the design elements are becoming a little bit tighter because there's so many homes, perhaps. Would that be a fair statement, Mr. Morales, in that we're trying to find the aesthetics that work under the pattern book, but there's so many neighboring homes that already have filed or filled that exception, so to speak. Now we're looking for exceptions to exceptions, it almost sounds like, right?
Melissa, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to share something.
Okay, you would. name, of course, thank you.
Melissa Monk, 316 North Lakeview Drive, Lake County.
Could you pull that mic down? Thank you.
Melissa Monk, 316 North Lakeview Drive, Lake County. Just wanted to touch base on a few things that I remember, making sure that I have. So you brought up the pattern, which I think is a great visual for people that are looking to come to the county to build within our corridors. But we require certain things. And I just wanted to point out that it's just not the pattern book that's followed, but it's also our supporting documents, zoning development code, and historic community pattern. It's all right here. I was a tad late, and quite frankly, I expected you guys to have us at a later time, just based on past days, and I spent a little extra time at home. But some of this might be restating what's already been said. But I think a key thing is to be able to look at the purpose of the pattern book, and this is part of community and new building design. And I just wanted to read something to you because when I was reading through this, there were some things that really hit close to me. This is the purpose of the pattern book. The city of Lake County is committed to excellence in architecture, planning, and landscape architecture. The purpose of these guidelines presented here is to contribute to the development of a well-planned urban environment by fostering the creation of visually compatible and harmonious development within the city's gateway corridors. The benefit will be spread over the whole city and will be shared by existing and future residents of the city. But there are 9 architectural styles listed as acceptable in the city's code for the gateway corridor standards. The city encourages creative design within these styles with the understanding that the architects and landscape architects are expected to incorporate their design the following. And then it goes through 9 different patterns or guidelines as well. Number 1, promote, protect, and maintain the city of Lake County's historic character in a small town atmosphere. Number 2, create and maintain a strong community image, identity, and sense of place. Number 3, create and maintain a positive visual ambiance for the community. Number 4, provide for well-landscaped scenic gateways to the city. Number 5, enhance the sustained property values. Number 6, promote a high degree of compatibility between surrounding structures and land uses. Number 7, establish and promote a standard for quality design and enduring quality development. Number 8, provide for traffic circulation patterns that enhance public safety, roadway capacity, vehicular and non-vehicular functions. Number 9, foster civic pride and community spirit by maximizing the positive impact of quality development. With that being said, when we follow our guidelines, when we make decisions, our guidelines under 5.04 is building orientation. If you go down to number 3, it says new residential garages. I want you to understand why this is in front of you today. B, underneath number 3, the garage design shall have, well, not D, it's under D, lot placement of garages and garage doors. The first one, in order to minimize the negative aesthetic appearance of garage door openings and vehicular activity, garage doors may not be facing the street unless designed at a detached garage placement in the rear of the lot, which takes us to number 3. The detached garage must be located behind the main structure of the rear lot on the interior side of the lot. This building may be connected to the main house by a breezeway. A breezeway is hereby defined as a roofed open-air structure that will remain open and not be allowed to be enclosed by screen or additional living area in the future. The breezeway must be at least 6 feet by 8 feet. There's an illustration. I believe you all saw the illustration. It's in your packet. Sometimes, this is a hard thing to say, but this is true. Sometimes lots don't lead to design, someone's desire, design.
One more time, could you say that a little clearer, please?
This is a hard thing for me to say, but it's the truth. Sometimes the design does not lead to the right design for the lot. We're following what has been given to us in structure by the city to follow. And our reason that we're here, and the reason that we voted no, was because of the placement of the garage. We didn't get into further detail on the house, because that was the sticking point. But as we get into further detail on the house, I just wanted to point out that it's submitted to us as a frame vernacular. Windows are not conforming because they're 9/9, some spots 6/6, which leads more of a colonial style. So this being approved is not fully functional due to the garage, which that was a key point for voting. But there's still things on the house that do not reflect the frame vernacular. Thank you.
I do have a question for you, if you don't mind. Gentleman, the owner, wondered what it would take to get an exception. How does the exception process work for the board? Can you give us a little breakdown of how that request would be made, or was it made in this case? The request for an exception?
Well, I think that's why it's here. We spent a long period of time trying to figure out how we can make this work within our guidelines. And it brought us to, we just can't do it. We can't do it. I think that there's a great gentleman that we have standing right here, Bobby, that he's able to work with and come up with some solutions. Bobby is solution oriented. That's why we have him here. That's why he works with all of us.
So you feel, I say you, but you as a board felt that this exception that he was requesting didn't work, but that there are things that will work. Is that what I'm hearing?
Bobby?
I believe that's what I heard. I just want to make sure I heard what I think I heard.
There are things. And unfortunately, we can't say yes to one person and no to the next, and yes to the no, and we can't do that. We can't, because you have given us guidelines that we need to follow. And we're following guidelines that are laid out by the city. And if you go back to, and I say this as a resident, part-time resident since early 2000, full-time since 2010. If we go back to what we're trying to achieve here in the city, that's why these codes are laid out. That's why we have structure. That's why we're so strict in those corridor areas.
And not to cut you off, but this is why we have the Historic Preservation Board, is to do all of this hard work for us. We very much appreciate the fact that you are endeavoring to make these codes work and to assist people and bring people in. It's a both and thing, so we appreciate that, and we want to support your efforts in that.
Well, thank you, because we're each one of us are very passionate about our community. Just not our structure and our buildings, but the people who live here as well.
Thank you. Mr. Morales, you approached the podium. Did you want to say something?
Bobby Morales. So, the board and my function, our job is not to design.
Right.
But we're all passionate about making sure something beautiful comes to fruition here at Lake Helen. And so I do help out, and I make myself available to the applicants. If they need to call me, email me, and I'll give them my suggestions and recommendations. And that's all I can do. I can't mandate. But I wish the design professionals would do their due diligence. And in the last 5 months, I've witnessed where they're just going along and not really paying attention to the guidelines. And then this is what happens. So I'm trying to catch that ahead of time, and I'm telling applicants when they're inquiring early to please get their design professional to contact me, and I'd be happy to go through the guidelines. So I believe this is the situation here. There's no doubt that he doesn't meet the guidelines. I don't need to tell you that what he needs to prove is hardship. And if hardship is proven and you're convinced, then you may consider making an exception. Thank you. And by the way, if I may, Vice Mayor, thank you for your kind words at the last meeting. I didn't get to publicly express my gratitude.
I appreciate your work so far. As for me, as a layman, I appreciate the level of detail and the approach for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Love working with the city.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
There's a motion on the dais there.
There is a motion and a second to deny. Yeah, to accept the recommendation of the board. Sir, did you want to say something else?
Did you just deny it?
No, we haven't, no.
Well,
Just restate the motion, that's all.
as long as I can have one more, let's read this for you. I didn't hear what it takes for an exception. And
The one thing that I heard-
I don't know.
Yeah, the one thing that I heard from Mr. Morales was that you would need to show hardship in order to get an exception. Or, I don't know exactly what that means in legalese, but you need to show that hardship and prove that hardship in order to receive the exception.
Well, would the hardship be the conditions that you have on the site?
It may be, but it's not our place to determine that. That would be determined by the Historic Preservation Board. And I don't know that you even have an opportunity to present that case. I don't know.
I'm interested in Mr. Morales. Okay, he's the expert here.
Yeah, and I think what you would need to do if we deny it, maybe I shouldn't even begin this question now. If we were to deny it, we would need to reapply. And Mr. Morales, let me ask you this question. If we were to deny this application, he would need to reapply and if he wants to go with the same design, prove hardship, or come up with a different design, is that correct?
Yes, we made some nice recommendations that would further enhance this home and also solve the problem that, because it is specific. So if he, and it's up to him whether he wants to pursue that with us and his design professionals. But we believe that there is a solution and we compromise here if you would consider our recommendation.
So did he request or did he try and prove a hardship and request that exception during your meeting?
He did try to prove a hardship, which is what he has presented to the commission here about the site conditions, storm drainage, but all of that with good design can be mitigated. My professional.
Opinion, yes, I understand, and I appreciate that, and that clarification. Some of this washes over me the first time, and I don't quite pick it all up. So I have to ask the same question a couple of times to really get it all, so thank you, I appreciate that.
Don't go yet.
Commissioner,
Yes, Commissioner.
I'm a visual person, so I'm looking at the plans here, and you had mentioned that if he moved the garage back 14 feet, the line up to the back of the house. Have you looked at the possibility of moving the garage back 14 feet and the laundry room back 7 feet?
I don't know.
It would still be attached to the house, but the laundry room would be the breezeway, that would be an enclosed breezeway.
you can't, yeah.
It needs to, the code still says it needs, you can't screen it, so.
So it still don't match the HOA requirement, okay?
I don't think it's germane. I don't think that's germane to the.
That's what they just figured out.
Well, I didn't know if it matched the HOA requirement.
It's frustrating, okay? It really is, because we've got a house here that was approved after the code change, okay? Originally, when Bobby and I were talking about this plan, the garage was further forward. And then he called one day and he says, why don't you push that garage back to just be 2 feet in front of the mudroom? And I said, yeah, I can do that. It's gonna be more concrete to drive, further off the road for the garage. But yeah, so we did that, okay? So now, this garage here, if you look at the other house that was approved after the code change, that is not pushed back as far as it could have been to be in the backyard. So I mean, this far exceeds that. You know, and it seems like what we're hanging our head on here is the placement of the garage being where it's at. In other words, if it was totally detached and behind the house, there wouldn't be an issue. And it is pretty darn close to being behind the house. I mean, it's 57 feet, 6 inches off the front property line. That's pretty far back. Okay, so when you're coming down the road, you're not gonna even see that garage if you're coming from High Street going west. Okay, you're not gonna see it, which is less than what you've got even with the side load garages, believe me. And then, let me finish. Sorry. Then, when you're driving through that subdivision at night, see how many people don't have their cars in their garages. It's too inconvenient to put them in there. There's not enough room. The builders aren't leaving enough room for them to swing into the garage. Okay, but that's what the people are suffering. And now we've got cars sitting out the driveway. So, you know, to me, I'd rather have it in the garage than sitting out on the driveway. I think it looks much better.
I understand.
So, and now I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. The exception that was made, that's been mentioned a couple of times, does that carry any? I don't know why the approval, after this code was changed, there was an approval of a similar structure. Does that carry any weight? And I guess really just a question for our city attorney.
Before Scott mentioned, let me just tell you that the approval within reference to the April 8th home is the modification of a previous approval that occurred prior to the change. So let's see.
So it final approval.
The permit was already active
Yeah.
before the code change.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's also one thing too that I mentioned before, and I'm sure Scott mentioned too. If the HOA rules are that you cannot have the front load in the garage, no matter if you approve it or not, they still can't have a front load garage. In other words, both boards have equal authority over that property. So you could approve it, and they could disapprove it, and it would still be disapproved. So that's just my consideration. And there, Scott, until you thunder, as he comments, there is a variance process within the gateway ordinance that can be followed. So my suggestion was simply either table it or deny it, and then come back with a modification and go through the process all over again if it wants to.
I do have, are you done?
Yes.
I do have one more comment I'd like to make. I was asked at the historic board meeting if I'd be wanting to take off the walls for the mudroom and just make that an open breezeway. And I did say I would if that made the difference. I don't know if it has any bearing on what you're thinking, but that was presented. And I did say I would take it off, take those 2 walls down.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any additional questions from the commission? Hearing no additional discussion or questions, are we ready to have a vote? The motion on the table is to follow the recommendation of the Historic Preservation Board and deny this application based on the placement of the garage. And there were some other items mentioned as well, but that would come back, that would be addressed in a future application. Okay. I don't need to rehash everything. Commissioner Eckert, do you want to discuss some more?
I don't think we'll through it, and if we deny it, he's gotta start the process all over again. If we send it back for him to work with them to review it and everything, because his last comment, he's willing to work with them on the breezeway connection and stuff. So if he's willing to work with them on doing the breezeway, I think if we send it back instead of totally turning it down, it gives them the opportunity to finish working on it, to make the improvements it's needed to do to come into compliance with what they're both looking for.
But with the denial, Mayor, and then Mr. Morales and Ms. Mullin, want the denial by default, if we were to vote for the denial, want the denial by default require the homeowner to go back to the HPB with design elements that might be that medium ground, or follow the variance process that's clearly stated in the gateway plan as well too. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking if we were to deny this by automatic, it's going to default back to the HPB.
What we have done in the past is deny based on specific things, and with the understanding that the applicant could, what's the right word?
Yeah, go ahead and make modifications based on but I'm not enough professional designer to know what's good or right now.
Oh, I understand. We would be kicking it back.
And
to
Mr.
the
Johnson, I mean
historical
no
preservation board.
disrespect to you, sir. You came in, I mean no disrespect to you whatsoever, sir. I'm inclined to vote against this, but I'll tell you why, is because I support what's happening here in the community. And I think you're going to be back in front of us again, if this vote goes that way. I'm fairly certain you're going to be back here for us again for approval without going through this for now. But I appreciate your candor. I appreciate your honesty. That's one of the most refreshing things up here as a commissioner, to actually sense that in an individual and just come straight up with it. So thank you very much, sir. Yeah.
We did have the option mentioned about possibly tabling this and sending it back to the Historic Preservation Board rather than completely denying it. Is that a help to the applicant, or is that just another way of saying the same thing?
Well, I think in either case, that we would not charge him for a reapplication fee. I think we work either way to get it through. But again, I remind him, he needs to include the HOA in the process, because we could approve it and still just approve it. So that has to be, their approval has to work in the process somehow.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, with that understanding of it, well,
Well, if we accept the recommendations of the historic board, it's going to throw it back for them back to the process. It's not going to deny the construction totally. It's going to throw it back to the boards of the HOA for him to work with them to get it to come into compliance.
Correct. When you're referring to the HOA, it's something that I'm not aware of. That was just Bobby and the historical board and yourselves.
the other gentleman that spoke back in the back corner, back over there, he is on the HOA board.
No,
Oh.
He's just an instant neighbor.
You're just a guy. Anyway,
He's the neighbor.
You do have a board member here, though.
He's the neighbor.
there is an HOA board as well that does also have the ability to deny construction based on this standard. And this standard matches with their standard. So even if we were to give you an exception, they would still have to be, they would have to approve it as well. So that's something you should be aware of, that you have that second board that you'll need to get approval from, or get whatever construction you do.
Well, that's fine. I'm trying to hang my hat on, I guess I need to try and investigate. Maybe I'll go over to the, find the fellow that's running the homes for I keep forgetting the Dover thing. And see why they approved it. I mean, I believe the same design was given with the garage on the left side originally. And then for some reason, now that house went before the board, and they said, well, it's not gonna work there, why don't you flip the house? So they didn't even tell them at that time, hey, you gotta make this a side load garage. Okay, they just said flip it. It was still the front load garage. So there's a reason why they approved it after the CO or the code had changed.
I believe that application was originated prior to the code change. So there was kind of an overlap there of,
Well, the other sheet of paper I got on here has two dates, and I'm assuming it's when it was presented to the board. I don't know, I'm just assuming. It was 2/10/21 and 3/12/21. So there is no dates here prior to that I could find. So all indications to me, and believe me, I don't know it all, is that these were dates when this first came up. And that's my assumption. You know what happens when you assume. So, you know, it's something that was done to approve this house. And they used the exception. That's the only way they could approve it.
well, I believe the application was submitted prior to the code change. So it was submitted under the previous code.
Okay.
Is what was explained to us here. So that, I think, is where the difference lies. Even though the dates overlap,
Oh, I would understand that. I would understand.
that's what I've heard tonight.
Yeah.
And to second what the vice mayor said, I have very much appreciated your candor and honesty about all this. It is refreshing. Thank you. And I believe we've heard everything we can possibly hear.
I'm done. Now I am done.
I appreciate that. We want everybody to have their full say. So thank you.
Please think hard.
Well, Commissioner, are you ready to vote? Zone one? Oh, well, let me tell you what, let me restate the motion. The motion is to approve the recommendation for denial as submitted by the Historic Preservation Board. The result of that would be to send it back into the process. The city administrator has said he would not additionally have to pay additional permit fees, or application fees, current application fees. So it will be it'll put you back on time, but not financially. So we have a motion and a second on that. Zone one?
Yes.
Zone two?
Yes.
Zone four?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So you have been denied, but I hope that you can get back into the process and have it made whole fairly quickly. I hope there are some good ways that this happens.
Well, to be honest with you, you know, with the prices of houses, and even for a guy to build them, it's going way out of hand. And this house, the way it sits right now is at my outer limits, and there's no way that I can, you know, move the garage any further back and increase my costs and everything. So if I'm back here, it'll be with a different house plan. It's really, it's just a matter of economics, and that's just the way it's gonna go. However, if I have something that I think is reasonable, I will be back here. So, and I hope the consideration is a little bit different, because I don't know what I'm gonna do, because I do not want to put a house down where all the fill is.
I certainly understand
That's
that.
the hardship with that. Thank you, folks.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your professionalism. Thank you. Do appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Morales and Ms. Long. That concludes the quasi judicial hearing. Now to old business. 3 ordinances providing changes in the city charter. Mr. City Administrator or Mr. City Attorney, would you like to present this to us once again?
Yes, Scott's on board.
There's 3 ordinances, presented, you need to read each title separately and vote on them separately. As directed, they're broken into 3 categories. One is to clean up technical changes. The second one is to change the term limits or terms from a 2-year to 4-year staggered terms. And then the third one is to provide the administrator with the decision-making authority over the employment matters, employees, hiring, discipline, termination, things like that. These are obviously, there's restrictions on what we do with these, and there's a ballot title and a ballot summary. These are the things I put together. They can be changed if you want to word them differently. We absolutely have that ability to word them differently. Trying to, ordinance, the little thing. We put 3 charters, one with each ordinance, and they're color coded. And so the changes associated with the changes to that particular ordinance. There's one that's a little unique, that's gonna be changed, even if there's one or two ordinance changes, and that's the one that currently says that we're supposed to have, biannual elections. As a cleanup matter, that needs to come out, because we don't do that. But if the 4-year term gets approved, then it's going to be, even year elections. But, so even if just say hypothetically all 3 approve, then it's going to, the one that's going to supersede, if you will, would be the one that governs the 4-year election, so even year. The change that we proposed, if just a cleanup ordinance passes, it would not go into effect because the 4-year would have to take precedent. Does that make sense?
I think so.
So is that
It's
clear?
very clear to me.
Okay, all right. And then the other thing, the only one other thing I changed on the, I believe it was the cleanup ordinance. Initially, we talked, it was in there about just removing both the personnel board and, in essence, the planning board. And as I was drafting the ordinances, I said, is there a reason to draw more attention to this? Because we are never getting rid of the planning board. We have to have it by law. So I left that in there, and so it just deletes the personnel board. And that's only, what we're doing, understand, is we're taking it out as a requirement that we have a personnel board. Doesn't mean you can't create one. It just means you don't have to have one under the charter. You can still have the authority to create one if you want one, but for, I think, as long as I've been representing you, we've had a charter requirement for a personnel board, but we don't have a personnel board. I don't think that we have board members serving on that. So it's always been one of those things that we had an issue that had to go to the personnel board, what would we do? So it's a good thing to take out to clean up. And that's part of the administrator's decision-making authority change. But other than those 2 things, we've gone through and color-coded the changes for each ordinance, proposed amendment with its own charter showing the public what, if they approve that, what will that look like? And so we can go through each one, I just need to make sure I fill up the ordinance.
Yeah, one doesn't have the number in it. I guess that's the staggered terms.
Okay, what ordinance number do we have?
3, 4, and 5.
3, 4, 5, okay. I will start with I think the one that, start with the cleanup ordinance.
Is that the first one?
That would be, yes, that would be ordinance number.
Let me ask the question this way, there's 2 sets of page numbers, one is the bottom center, bottom right is the whole packet. So if you'll give us the page number on the bottom right, it should show us exactly what page you're on.
Well,
Oh, you may not have those.
what I have is not taking ours.
Rats. Okay, so you're on the first chart thing, at what page?
Whatever this page is.
I'm on
68.
Is that the first one?
68.
That's the technical.
Okay. So I can read this?
Yes.
I'll go ahead and read the first one, this is, ordinance number 3?
Yeah, 2022-1.
Okay, 2022-03, by title only for first reading. An ordinance of the city of Lake County, Florida adopted pursuant to Florida statute sections 101.161 and 166.031. Setting forth a proposed amendment to the city's charter to be submitted to the voters of the city in the general election on November.
November
November 8th, 2022, providing for the ballot summary and title for the proposed amendment, providing for conflict, providing for severability, providing for codification, providing for an effective date. This is the cleanup orders. And you see the ballot summary down at the bottom. The limitation is 75 words. And then you see the question on the next page.
I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve on first reading, ordinance number 2022-03 on first reading.
Second. I have a motion from Vice Mayor Connell, a second from Commissioner Eckert to approve ordinance 2022-03 on first reading. Do we have any discussion? I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned the ballot summary. A phrase that stood out to me through the ballot summary and updating the current charter is good management practices. Is that a legal term or just sort of a makes us feel good term? Okay. I was thinking we needed to shorten it, to make it a little less wordy. If we left out that phrase throughout those things, it would. I don't know that that's necessary. Just, I like the idea of good management practices, of course, but.
I think it encourages the.
Does it sound, that sounds good?
Well,
and explains the philosophy.
Well, clearly we could sit here for the next hour and discuss good management practices and all kinds of various levels.
That's kind of what I was wondering. It's a little bit vague.
It's certainly vague, but in terms of spirit, for me, I like to read something like that because it also provides an opportunity then for the public to say, this is not good management practices that you guys have been doing up here.
That was just one thing that stood out to me, and I wanted to see what y'all's thoughts were. Thank you.
That's just my thought.
It's a good thought. Any additional discussion on motions concerning ordinance number 2022-03? Hearing none, call the question. Zone 1?
Yes.
Zone 2?
Yes.
Zone 4?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Motion to approve ordinance number 2022-03 carries.
Okay, next ordinance is ordinance number 20-22-04. An ordinance of the city of Lake Helen, Florida, adopted pursuant to Florida statute sections 101.161 and 166.31, setting forth a proposed amendment to the city's charter to be submitted to the voters of the city at the general election on November 8, 2022, providing for ballot summary and title for the proposed amendment, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, providing for codification, providing for an effective date. This is the change that deals with the terms, going from 2-year terms to 4-year staggered terms. And it also modifies the existing, some of the terms that people currently in office to implement that change.
This one deals with the hire, terminate, evaluate employee.
No, the 4-year term, I said, that's the one, the order I have here. That's the next one.
I was going by page number line.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, this is what page number we're on that.
Do we include the title for the other one, if you consistent with y'all, what you have?
I still would like to know.
Okay, I'll just.
Page 108, Mayor.
Actually, we have to.
Yeah, 108 for the staggered term, sir, and then page 88 for the city commission, to give the city administrator the administrative supervisory authority.
I can go ahead and read it.
The one you just read is fine, we can take them in that order.
What's this one's on?
This is the 04,
2022-04.
and that is the 4-year term.
And that's page 108?
That is ironic.
Yeah, 108. Yes, okay, yes it is. All right, thank you. Now we're all on the same page. literally. Did you need to read the ordinance number, or did you already?
All right,
Okay, do we have a motion concerning ordinance number 2022-04?
Make a motion that we approve ordinance 2022-04.
Do I have a second? I have a motion from Commissioner Eckert, a second from Commissioner Rutledge to approve ordinance number 2022-04. Any discussion?
You know, several $1,000s or close to about $10,000 now for us.
And give the citizens a chance to vote on it, see what they want done.
Indeed.
Absolutely. One thing that we do have here as far as just pure discussion goes, being such a small city, all of us, we're not out there hiring high-price firms to manage our campaigns. We're doing it all on our own, and it's different here. It truly is. It's a much more impactful thing here than it is in larger cities. Just like I say, for pure discussion purposes, it is up to the citizens to be right. That's exactly where it should be. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. We're passing of ordinance 2022-04, Zone 1,
Yes.
Zone 2,
Yes.
Zone 4,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Now, and you said it was page 80, what was?
The next one is page 88.
88, thank you.
And what would the number of that ordinance be?
5.
So for ordinance number, the third ordinance in your list here, if you would introduce that to us and read it to us.
Ordinance number 2022-05. An ordinance of the city of Lake Calhoun, Florida, adopted pursuant to Florida statute section 101.161 and 166.031, setting forth a proposed amendment to the city's charter to be submitted to the voters at the general election on November 8, 2022, providing for the ballot summary and title of the proposed amendment, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, providing for clarification, providing for an effective date. This is the one that eliminates the requirement to have a personnel board and provides the city administrator with what is described as administrative and supervisory authority to hire, terminate, discipline, promote, etc. city employees in the city.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve on first reading ordinance number 2022-05.
Second. I have a motion from Vice Mayor Connell, a second from Commissioner Eckert to approve ordinance number 2022-05 on first reading. Any discussion? I had a fleeting thought that I'd like to fleet before y'all as well. Since we are just at the first reading stage, putting the power of hiring and firing, relinquishing the power of hiring and firing is a very significant step. It did occur to me that one way we could take or could hold within the commission some supervisory authority in a way which would not keep all the problems that we currently have, where we're doing everything publicly, would be to, particularly in the case of department heads, when the city administrator wants to hire a department head, I think it would be appropriate for him to come before the commission, much the way the Senate does with Supreme Court justices, put us in an advise and consent role, where we're not doing the interviewing of all applicants. We're simply getting a recommendation from the city administrator, and we become advising consent role on department heads, mainly because of chief of police, being such a pivotal position. Well, it's really just chief of police and public works, and I guess, administration as well, hiring a department head. And what's your title?
Well,
Director of Administration?
Yeah, that's not an official position, but that's what we call it.
Oh, okay, so, I was a little gray on that, that's why I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
But those two positions that I mentioned, chief of police and the head of public works, we could retain that if we added added some verbiage about maintaining an advising consent role. I don't know if y'all would be interested in that, or just simply to devolve all of that power down to the city, or not down to, but to the office of the city administrator.
What are your concerns, Mayor?
To maintain some greater authority and a more public role when we hire such a public office, particularly as chief of police. Public works while it's a similar level or tier employee, it's not such a public office as chief of police, which is obviously a very public office. And that brings that before the commission and before the citizens, before a permanent hire is made. That was going to be my last thing put on that, would be before a permanent hire. If he were making an interim selection, he, being the city administrator, making an interim selection, wouldn't need to come before the commission, but for a permanent hire, we could have an advisory consent. It's not necessary, it's just something I thought of as a potential to keep a little bit of the authority here at the commission and for the people, for a part of the personnel process that's not so fraught with danger as discipline and firing is, where we've had trouble in the past. Any thoughts on that? If y'all don't love it, that's fine.
No thoughts on that, I just have, I don't know, I just got this feeling, half of these changes and everything about this particular one. And that is giving up a lot more than just the hire and fire on this issue. I really have to think hard about this one, but I'm not going to deny the citizens a chance to vote on it. And
this is
being
by
a
far,
representative, I would just have to acknowledge what they want. And if the citizens want it, then that's the way it's going to be.
I agree with you that this is by far the most substantive change. I think the most important, our city attorney mentioned, are the cleanup changes, the cleanup language. Those are very critical, probably most important in many ways. But this is the most substantive change as far as the governance of the city goes. It's a big step. And it is appropriate that it go before the citizens.
Basically, what this is switching it from is a commission administrator form of government to administrator commission form of government.
Almost.
I don't know that I would say that.
I don't agree.
I think it,
Well, that's the way I understood it in the class.
yeah, that seems to be kind of a common public view of it. And what I view when I look at your charter and what's occurred to it over time is the question, are you a commission form of government or are you more of a manager type government? And you've gone all the way to manager type government except for this issue. This is the only issue that you are not really truly a manager city council form of government. It is this one particular issue. So you've gone a long way to be, you're nowhere close to a commission form of government. You're not even close. Commission form of government would be,
Me
the mayor would
responsible
be,
for something, you're responsible.
you're in charge of the police department, you're in charge of the finance department, Jim would be in charge of the planning department, Heather would be in charge of the public works. We're nowhere close to that. But this is the last step to get to being a true, and I don't know if we're changing the word manager, but we don't say that, an administrator form of government, manager form of government. And we all understand the issues we have to deal with bringing the employment matters before you in a public meeting. when you're governed by the sunshine law. It makes hiring difficult, and it's an uncomfortable termination process at best. It's potentially legally jeopardizing at worst.
We've seen it.
You've seen it. So, but I just would say that, this is the big change from we're now shifting the whole administration of the government. That's the only reason I wanted to say something about that. Is in my view, y'all have done a lot of shifting already. This is just the final step of this.
One more step.
And speaking for myself as a commissioner up here, and then also as a resident, in the hiring of Brandon Mullins, I took a very active role myself in that. I talked with as many citizens that would talk to me, and then as many that call me or email me or what have you. And then talked with Mr. Walker and talked with Mr. Mullins. Well, so I took a very active role in that hiring. I would also take an active role in that firing, but still defer to the professionals because I don't have that incumbent certification, HR certification to accept that liability role in any way. But I'd certainly take an active political role, clear political role, because I'll be held accountable. Right? I've always said that. My decisions are my decisions, and some folks will like them, some folks won't. That's just comes with the job here. It's okay. I'm okay with that. So I take an active role in that hiring of somebody critical like that. So in deference to what your comments are, I think I see where you're headed to with that, but it's incumbent upon that person sitting in these commission seats now and in the future to take that active role in that hiring, especially in such a small community, because that individual chief, along with the partnership and the city administrator and the city attorney in some respect, is going to have an integral, personal, and then sometimes intimate role with that community out there. And in some cases, those decisions will be made by the chief of police and the city administrator wanting to get to here. And that's kind of the point. I'll let the professional deal with the professionals. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Okay, any additional discussion?
Yes, I'm just curious about the comments that you made, Mayor. Were you looking for public input by suggesting that or what would?
I was floating out there to see if it made sense to y'all. You're my sounding board as much as anything. Yes.
Do you think we would benefit from that?
Well, as I said, this is, I think, the most, in public perception particularly, this is the most significant change that we're putting before the public in the way that the city will be governed. And I was looking for a way to maybe retain a little bit of authority in the commission. It would be very small compared to the full weight of the change. But it would be maybe a way to make it a little bit more. There's two sides to it. One, it makes it a little more complicated. People are going to say this seems convoluted. And the other would be it would retain a little bit of power in the commission, which might ameliorate some of the concerns that the public would have and little delegating power or reappointing power to the administrator's office as opposed to the commission. It's just a thought, didn't seem to, kind of went over like a lead balloon. And I'm okay with that. To me, it made great sense in my mind, but it's not an important thing for me. I appreciate the ordinance. I think it's an important thing for us to do. And we'll certainly have to live with whatever the citizens decide. And I believe in the process, that process, the citizens will decide. There will be a great amount of discussion and the corporate decision-making process, I get it wrong sometimes, but most of the time I don't.
I wonder if the public would be more subject to that, retaining some, like you said.
I don't know. It does make it a little more convoluted, though. That's the flip side of that coin. It sounds like we're trying to have our cake and eat it too. It's kind of what it sounds like. But anyway, there's a motion before us to approve. I've forgotten the ordinance number, 2022-05. Zone 1.
Yes.
Zone 2,
Yes.
Zone 4,
Yes, sir.
Hardin County 4.
Yours on time.
And Mayor votes yes. Motion carries. And, how's your time looking?
I'd like to discuss a little bit about 10A, just a little bit.
Okay,
before I-
that's where we're headed. New business 10A, 2 ordinances amending the comprehensive plan and zoning the southerly portion of 137 South Euclid. Concerns Congregational Church, Mr. Administrator, if you would introduce this to me. Mr. City Attorney, would you read the title?
Ordinance number 2022-01 by title only for first reading. An ordinance of the city of Lake Ellen, Florida, amending its comprehensive plan by amending the future land use map by changing the future land use designation on the property identified herein from public land to single family low density, providing for legislative findings, providing for conflict, providing for severability, providing for codification, providing for effective date. And Mayor, typically what we'll do is we'll present both cases, both ordinances, and we'll just talk about the entire, application, and then you will vote on it separately.
Okay, go right ahead.
And then ordinance number 20-22-2 by title only for first reading. An ordinance of the city of Lake Ellen, Florida, amending its unified land development regulations by rezoning the property from public lands and institution PLI to SFR3, providing for legislative findings, providing for conflict, providing for severability, providing for codification, providing for an effective date. The Mayor, the zoning is a quasi judicial hearing, which would also require disclosure of the community.
Okay, so we're entering a quasi judicial hearing. Are there any ex parte communications that need to be disclosed by the commissioners?
I've had none, sir.
None.
And I've had none, so thank you for that reminder. Any discussion on these ordinances as presented?
I have one question. Do we know what's, and this is essentially the parsonage next door to the church, is that right? We're talking about, what's going to happen to the food pantry?
That's up to the church.
Do we have any idea? Oh, thank you. Someone's here that can answer the question.
If you would state your name, and we appreciate you being here to help us.
My name is Pam Ware, and I'm a trustee for the church.
Yes, sir, thank you. What's going to happen to the food pantry?
We don't have a food pantry, the Methodist church has that.
This is the Congregational Church. You waited all this time to ask that great question.
Ma'am,
I know that feeling.
you can call me confused. Everybody hear that? Good. Thank you, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Not.
I got one for the PLDRC. I don't know if you can answer it, but my question is, why did they choose SF3 when the rest of the residents on the block are BCR or BSR and DCD? It's gonna be the only SF3 on that block.
Mr. City Administrator or Mr. City Attorney,
Going by
the
the zoning map.
I can probably best answer that, since I'm the one that put it there. When the ordinance first came to me, I can't remember what the zoning, and it was institutional or public, I can't remember, but when I was looking at the comp plan, to put together the comp plan ordinance, the future land use we were going to and the zoning we were going to didn't allow anything. So what went to the planning board, what it was going to, it had no density requirement, nothing could be built. So I thought we were creating a non-conformity. And so when I talked to staff, there was a provision in the comp plan that had a chart that said that the zoning we were going to was consistent with this provision of the comp plan. I don't know if that was an old chart, because when they didn't match up. When I read that part of the comp plan, the zoning, it just seemed to me we were going to put a land use and zoning on there, that if there was ever damage to that property, we would never be allowed, they would never be allowed to put another house back on the property, because no density was allowed. So we picked a land use and zoning that was the least intense, that was consistent with the size parcel that they were going to. And so that's why it was selected. Now, the PCD, I can tell you, that is a planned development process, a very.
It's a downtown commercial district.
Yeah, it's commercial, and so this is residential house, and so.
I don't know why, because there's some houses on there, why they did that. They should look at those as BSR also.
So the short answer is, when I looked at it, I had a concern that we were putting a land use and zoning on there that didn't allow any residential, didn't allow any. And I thought that was not going to be
Well, the PLI, Public Land Institute, is what it is currently.
Mhm.
The BSR is business services and residential.
What's that now?
The BSR is business services and residential. So it's a residential and business district.
We have a lot of that. It's also consistent with the desire of the church to sell the parsonage as a single-family home. The whole intent is to sell the parsonage, use the funds to renovate the church itself. So right now, as the city attorney, there's institutional, first of all, not on a patrol, could be sold or used as single-family residence, which is fraught with difficulties. So the land will have to also be subdivided, if we could do it administratively at staff level. But right now, the parsonage and the church are on one plot of land. And then we'll have to subdivide it off. Parsonage will become single-family residential, be sold off. The parsonage will remain institutional. We'll have to be given a new street number. We're going to leave the street number for the parsonage. Right now it's 137. It will stay on 37, and parsonage will be 107. Something like that. But yes, again, the whole thing is predicated on the desires of the church to be able to sell the parsonage, use the funds for the church. We were simply trying to accommodate their request.
Well, I mean, I just had a question out there. It works either way for me, because if you go west on the other side of Euclid, it's SF3, which is Asa Gray Park, which is SF3.
To maintain the single-family neighborhood, SF3, I don't know how those things got the way they were, but there's a lot of combinations close to the central business district that really muddle the waters in terms of what's the central business district and what's not.
One of the issues, I don't know how big the parcel is, just looking at the BSR that you're referring to, it has a minimum lot of width of 100 feet. Does this have 100?
Yeah, it's a little over 100, 101 or 102 or something like that.
Okay.
Well, aside from my confusion earlier, I swear I read Methodist Church in that several times. I don't know what I had in my head, so I have my apologies for that. And so I'm amenable either, I'm amenable to that.
Thank you. They're the ones that's got the, on the other side of Main Street, they've got a little place where they have the knitting and the sewing and the quilting. Nice little place over there.
In my mind, I had it as a Methodist church, and clearly mistaken. Commissioners of the public, please forgive me, but I must leave, and I've been permitted time here in which to leave tonight. I double scheduled myself. And
Thank you for staying.
for the record, I'll stay for the vote.
Well, I need a motion. We have a motion to approve these two, I need to vote on each one individually. So we have a motion for ordinance number 2022-01.
Move.
Second?
I'll second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Eckert, a second from Commissioner Rutledge to approve ordinance number 2022-01. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Ordinance 2022-2, we have the same process.
I make that motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Motion from Commissioner Eckert, a second from Commissioner Rutledge to approve ordinance number 2022-2 upon first reading. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
And for the record, it's 8:52, and Jim Connell's with me.
Jim Connell's out. I will,
See you guys.
we'll take a 5-minute recess now. Back in 5. What's the website? I know. My notes. I was looking at my notes real hard trying to find it. I added my notes. That's part of my notes. Well, I was looking at probably preceded I guess if they decide to take back the parking Visually, it makes sense to maybe read.
Long story short.
I'll do it again if I have to.
Yeah.
I know it's all.
Call meeting back to order, and we move to public forum. I have a whole bunch of yellow cards in front of me. I will take them, I think, in the order that I got them. Ms. Lizabelle Cody, are you here? Yeah. Thank you. It would be nice if you could. I'm sorry, but it's hard for us to hear. The wireless mic, maybe we can get a wireless when we get our new system, if that ever happens. Thank you, Ms. Cody.
My name is Bluebell Cody. I live at 825 Joe Smith Lane. And I'm here tonight only because they're building a house right in front of me. I've been living there for 60 years, and here finally a house come in front of me. They don't have no water over there, they don't have no lights. And here today, the guy wanted to know could he use my water until they get that going. So the city do something for them. Because when they first came up there, the city did come and was managing different things. But they never showed up with no water, no nothing. Even Duke Energy, they was out today. And that's why I come to the city. How can you all let them come in to build a house, they make the foundation because they bring water in containers. And then now they got the foundation and everything. Now they got what you know water so they can put the bricks and stuff. And nobody from the city, even our commissioner on our end, I haven't seen his face up there.
I didn't even know they were building another house.
Well, if they come to you all, you should know.
Well, they come to the permit office to pull a permit or make an
Well, somebody
application.
should
It
show
doesn't come to the commission directly for an application.
And everybody we asked, it shows up there, we said, who really, who are, nobody seems to know nothing. So that's why I'm down here. I like somebody to show up.
That's the
So
reason.
these are going farther.
Well, first,
Ms. Cody,
well, if somebody has asked the nice lady for water, they're stealing water from the nice lady. There are provisions for us to rent a meter to the builder, which happens virtually every building situation, and they take a meter to the city and the consumption of water. That's available to the builder. I have no idea what a builder decides. So it's a nice lady, but she could say no, and we would supply a meter to the developer. In terms of inspections, they have a valid building permit, and we do. The inspector will be out there inspecting the construction. So I'm not really sure what you're concerned about.
I'm determined on why the city, letting them build there without having their own water running.
They have to ask for the water from the city.
But why are you all letting them build, putting a foundation, all this stuff there?
They have a permit and they're allowed to build.
Yeah, they're allowed to build us, yeah.
But you should not give them free water.
I'm not.
Thank you.
I'm not even in water.
Thank you.
they have a way, the builder can get water. It
Yeah,
gets
the
city
girls can't get water
water.
because they hauling water up there in tanks.
Well, they have the right to do that, but they have a very easy mechanism to get water to the building. It's a common thing, it's just to To get a temporary meter.
To get water.
Well, how-
Public Works does them in the order they receive them. It's on the list to get one meter and water.
Oh, okay, so it's on the list and
Yeah,
everything.
it's just, they do it in the order of the permits that are picked up.
Okay.
Well, who is doing the building? Who is building? Who got the contract for the city, from the city?
I don't know who's full up.
There is no contract with the city, a builder who is building that and presumably owns the land, will come in and get a building permit from the city, we inspect it, make sure it's built for a building code, and that's what's happening.
Well, it's a whole thing that nobody from the city been up there.
Well,
And I'm home every day, it's no excuse.
the city contracted building inspector to make sure that building is constructed according to our building code. It is not something where the city staff goes out to inspect it. We contract that to professionals to do just that.
Well, who is professional? Can you tell me who the guy is that's running?
It's Mark Criswell from Universal Solutions, Universal Engineering, Universal Engineering.
Who is it?
Mark Criswell,
Uh-huh.
and, my friend's coming tomorrow. I'll talk to him tomorrow.
Well, you need to,
Yeah.
because it is up going forward, because I've been living on that dead-end street for 60 years. Nothing did up there, and then they just gotta come in and do as they please.
Well, they shouldn't.
But the city do, and I'm paying taxes, I'm paying everything.
Obviously, you call me, but you need to call me, you need to call Don Deep, you need to call somebody.
Look here, every time I call out to the city, somebody's gone. This was busy, that was busy. I said, that's the way it is, so you don't get no kind of answer.
Well,
But I just came to show my face to say what I'm saying tonight.
thank
You
you.
all don't go further, you all don't send nobody down there to check. So my lawyer will be there.
Okay.
That's all I got to say, Lord.
They've already got two inspections. They've already got 3 inspections.
Okay. So we are working on it, and thank you for bringing those concerns to us. Yes, ma'am?
My name is Joyce Jones. I live on 875 Richmond Lane. I was dining for the last week. He said there was a private road. So how can they build a house on a private road?
They don't need a public road. No,
Really?
absolutely. Absolutely, we have lots of.
But you want, but the water can get back to me, calling me, letting me know who the road belongs to. If it's a private road.
There is no road there. All of your lots, butt up against each other. You literally drive down to the front yard. It looks like a road, but it's not.
So that's good. In other words, it's a lane, like I say, 875 goes to the line.
Yeah, what's the name? It's called, what's this?
Joseph Lane, yeah.
Your address is Joseph Lane.
Yeah.
Yeah. And.
So that's a lane, not a road.
Yeah, legally it's not.
Well, legally, what there probably exists is a ingress egress easement. That's a private ingress egress easement that each abutting property owners are allowed to drive over the other adjoining property owners' lands to get to their property. But it's not a public road that's maintained by the city. It wasn't a public right of way.
Well, you know, I know it's not, run by the city. Because my aunt and I, we don't want paved road to have it back in it or not. So all them trucks is coming up in there, the dump truck, with all the bricks and the cement, it's finna mess up our road. That's why we didn't have the garbage truck to come down here. So I guess we don't have to fix it again. You know what? I'm not either.
Well,
And if the fire truck come down in there, they gonna tear it up. Very long, they don't come down.
Typically, the cost of maintaining, this is really a driveway, is what it is, a long driveway to all the properties. And the cost of maintaining that should be shared by all the properties benefited by that driveway. Everybody should share.
But that's what me and my aunt and I did.
But obviously, there's other properties that benefit from that, and they should help pay for it.
Huh? What other area to there?
Well, the ones they're building now.
The builder, who's ever building now, has access across that property. Each lot, I mean, I don't know what the picture is, but it sounds like there's a private drive that they're allowed to drive to get to their property that they bought to build a house. I haven't seen a map of it, but presumably it's either that or they don't have access to the property, which legally you can't landlocked property, you can't. They will have a legal right of access. You have to go to court to get it, but you can't block off, you can't landlock a piece of property so it has no legal access. So probably if you look in the public records, there's probably a easement that has been granted that they have the right to drive across that access to the property.
So in other words, we need to talk to the guy that's building the house over there and see what he's gonna do about that road. Isn't it told him?
I would, that's fair, yeah, that's fair
Uh-huh.
discussion.
Yeah. But when he come up in that white truck again, I'm gonna make my business to go down and talk. No, the city just had this guy coming along building houses from one spot to the other. Now he's building one on Ohio, between Ohio and Goodman Street. And that's what they do, and the city just let them do as they please, get that money cheap, that's all, the cheap lady, that's all. The city's not doing anything but the side.
They do have, you know, they've put the application before the city, they do have
Yeah.
right
Yeah,
to do
but
it.
application for the city, but still you all supposed to let other people know. I had 3 people come up in there, like, last month, looking for this property there, over there by I-3, how to get there. I said, well, I don't know how you gonna get there, because you sure not going back on my land to get back up in there.
I understand. Well, thank you.
But this is the guy.
I'm not sure we gave full and complete answers, but I'm sure the staff is aware of it. Mr. Jeremy Davis, next card I have. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Jeremy Davidson, 410 West Michigan Avenue. Good evening, and thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm here again to talk about speeding and traffic safety. We did the last meeting with one of my neighbors, and we heard some stories from even the commissioners sharing the same concerns. There's some very good ideas on the table of how to address that. Placement of stop signs and speed limit signs are none are posted today, things of that nature, and you know, all seem like very reasonable ideas, and yet here we are, nothing has changed. So just to reiterate that fact, I went to visit my mother today in the villas and noticed on Lemon Avenue where there were literally no children. There's a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit sign and a big yellow sign that says "Children Playing." So in the neighborhood where I live, which is filled with children crisscrossing the street to play with one another, there's not a speed limit sign anywhere to be seen. And it's, I keep saying it, it's only a matter of time before someone's pet, child, pedestrian gets hit, injured, killed. It's well past unacceptable for this to continue, and I don't know why it's so difficult. And we're asking for your help. This is ordinary citizens cannot control traffic. We need the city's help to do this. It just continues, it continues, it continues. I'm not the first citizen to bring this up. It doesn't just affect my neighborhood, so I just hope that the commission makes it a priority and really make these improvements that could save a life one day. And that's why we're here, so we'll continue to bring it up. Thank you again.
Mr. Davidson, thank you for your comments. Mr. Eckert, did you want to be recognized?
Again, you're talking about the signs in the villas. The villas is responsible for all the signs inside. That's why they've got their own smaller stop signs. They install their own electronic sign to show the people what their speed limit is when they're going in. All that stuff. So the HOA can buy the signs and follow the city's requirement on having them put in.
That actually might be an avenue for you to pursue with the HOA. I don't know what would be required to get the city to start putting in additional signs. Certainly additional stop signs would be a pretty significant burden.
We've met with Jeremy and he's actually right, a lot of good ideas. We've committed to installing both speed limit signs and consider stop signs. We've also done speed monitoring, I almost said speed traps, speed monitoring in the woods too. Where we know we have cut through traffic going to Avion, Martin Avenue.
The issue with the woods, the issue with the town, they cut through the woods. You guys are completely right.
I'm sorry, Joe, if you want to speak, you can come up with hollering back and forth.
No, I'm sorry, you're right. It's okay. Sir, I want that.
For one thing, I just can't understand you. It's hard in this room.
It's fine.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Administrator.
I also owe Jeremy an email response. April 18th, and I still owe you the response.
We don't want to seem unresponsive. We are, I think, we are concerned.
Thank you.
That may be small souls. Shane O'Neill.
Sharon O'Neill, Florida, West Michigan, and Mr. Davidson from me. These are the words. Just echoing what he said, I was up here last month. Great city, love this town. But every time I pull out my driveway, across the street, riding my bike, I'm getting my life in my hands today. I was going up Summit, trying to beat the speed limit at 30, going south on Summit. Guy comes flying by me at 55, crosses the lane on a double yellow. Just, I lose them. I mean, the concern I have is I don't have small children. Mr. Jeremy Davidson has small children. My neighbor, Roxanne, who's also on board, has small children. I don't have small children, but we do have a children's park. And I just think 2 well-placed stop signs. The other issue is there's no posted limit, so even if police were to enforce it, there's no posted limit, so I don't think it's enforceable. And I do see the patrols, but it's a small force and it's a large area of patrol, so I just think if you do enforcement, they're going to behave for a week and come back and behavior will continue. So I think placing stop signs, because that section on South Volusia is exactly a quarter mile, and people think it's the Internationals, essentially. So we only have one stop sign. I think 1 or 2 well-placed stop signs plus a 15. I would like to see a 15-mile-an-hour, because even at 30 miles an hour takes car travels 45 feet a second. So a kid wouldn't have a chance. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just for a point of reference, that's county maintained road. We could put a stop sign up there with the county's permission. But we could, some.
From New York to the city limits is county maintained.
Yes.
From New York to Maine is ours.
Yes. Yeah. And we have an issue right in the corner too, some. But anyway, it's whatever the maintenance responsibility, if we need to get permission to come and do it at the site. Otherwise, we can do it ourselves.
Thank you. Bonnie Hughes.
Bonnie Hughes, 386 North Lakeview Drive, Lake Keller. I'm here tonight just to give you a quick synopsis of where the legacy project is at this time. I haven't been before you in a while, I want to do that before the summer comes. I think that you all know that the gala was fun and exciting, and we were able to raise $10,000, which was a goodly amount for us to raise in one evening. We are planning next year's gala, and we are also looking for sponsors of $1,000 to help us to free the cost of the next gala that we're planning in February. We also had a gathering of construction owners and lake homes. The reason that we had it was to inform them of the project and to ask for in-kind donations, which we will also be using with the money that we raise for the Lower Park related project. We also have put up a sign. I hope you saw our sign at Lower Park. And in that sign, it's a QR square. I had to learn all this, thank you very much. But what it does is it leads you to our website where you can donate to the project or you can buy a brick. We're still selling bricks to our operational costs that we have in doing what we do for the project. This summer, we will be doing a capital campaign, and what I mean by that is we're looking for donations from banks, foundations, grants, personal people. So we're ramping up that part of the project right now to find money. We need to raise $80,000 for the Foothill project, and then use in-kind to boot. The other thing that I have one concern, that there's a lot of misinformation going on in the city about the project. And I am hopeful that the Legacy Committee and commissioners can help us to get the correct information out there to the public, which I think is very important. We're looking at ways to do that so that everyone knows what the project is about and how it is being done through a public-private venture that we are working on together. And we need your assistance in that area. That's basically all I had, and I'd like to thank you for your support. And I'd like you to know that we're working as hard as we can to bring this to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will say that I met with Representative Fetterhoff a couple of days ago, and the Fetterhoffs agreed to buy 2 bricks. So I need to get that QR code to them so they can do that. So I will.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next yellow card is from Charlene Bishop.
Bear with me, I'm not going to be able to get through this, but, speaking of this information, there are those in town presuming they know what are in others' minds. Now, Dominique, could you please put that up? I find it sad and painful that I would have to be here in front of the whole world defending something that is and should have stayed personal to my family. Easter is a very difficult time in our family, as our oldest son passed away on Easter Sunday some years ago. So when I had a chance to honor his memory with a beautiful cross, I jumped at it. And it is also a time of reflection at our house. So yes, I sponsored a cross in the memory of days gone by in our city. Let me please explain the meaning, as some very cold-hearted people can only find negativity in every action, no matter how pure and innocent. While progress may have paved Orange Camp Road and even added the roundabout, it cannot remove the memory I have as a child riding in the back seat down that red clay road in the rain and fishtailing into a ditch. While progress can build the woods of Lake Helen, it cannot erase my memories of flying a kite, running through the fields, and playing in the old hay barn with my siblings. While progress can take down the orange grove on Lake Pullen Creek, it cannot take away my memories of walking down there with both of my sons and witnessing the sheer joy on their faces as they picked themselves in orange and had, I have memories of my lifetime in this town. I have endless memories of my lifetime in this town, but for the sake of time, I will stop here. So yes, I did sponsor a cross in the memory of what Lake Helen once was. Maybe I'm just being selfish. But oh yes, I miss the old Lake Helen. But mostly, I miss the people I share those memories with. And I thank God every day I still have my memories, and no one but He can take those from me.
Thank Thank you very much, Ms. Bishop. I appreciate your bringing that to us. Very good. And you're right, there was misunderstanding there, some of it even on my part. I never vocalized any of it, but I didn't understand it. And I appreciate understanding it now. Thank you. And this is, you're next.
I want to talk about Faith Grove. And you know, all right, first of all, the land development code. The purpose of the land development code is to afford the city of Lake Helen residents and visitors to preserve the small town charm, honor, build upon the city's historical heritage, preserve existing residential and rural character, and so on and so forth. We all know what it means. Now, I'm concerned, and I mentioned this to you and to Mr. Everett. My concern is the median on Lakeview Drive. Right now, the plan calls, I see them tearing it up, and that's what's got my. Anyway, the median in Lakeview Drive creates a traffic flow problem for the building. He plans to put 4 homes on Lakeview Drive, with the driveways onto Lakeview Drive. Well, there's a median in the middle of the road, and everybody would have to drive north. But there's a 3-way stop sign on Lake Borough. So I don't know where all these cars are gonna go when they leave their driveways, because they can't make a U-turn and they can't do anything else. My question to you, is it in the plan to remove that median from Lakeview Drive?
No.
Nobody's ever brought that. That's the first I've ever heard that said. No, there are no plans.
I'm just asking that question because that's gonna be the next thing to drop.
No, but the answer to the part of it, they're tearing it up because they're running a water line across it.
We are,
Yeah, but there's no plans whatsoever to take it out.
okay? I'm just putting it out there, I want everybody to know that we're watching that median and it better not come down.
Thank you. Betty O'Loughlin.
Betty O'Loughlin, 715 McKenzie Road. We had a parks and playground meeting on the 3rd of May, and thank you, Mr. Everett, because he gave us a lot of information that we have been asking for. So we left, of course, we have already go at 9 o'clock to say but we did, we got a lot of information, he filled us in on a lot of things, I won't go over it here because I did keep my notes. But I really appreciated that, and we all, Nancy, of course, was there, Roxanne was there, from Commissioner Kelly Pascal was there, and Paula Smith was there. And it was a good meeting, and it was, however long we are, we, felt that we had at least given more information, and that's what we needed. As Bonnie said, we want to get the information so everybody knows what's going on. Then something I just remembered, our road, and I called Austin about it, if you drive down McKenzie Road, here comes, you go north past my house, just up a little ways, the road drops. It is I already mentioned it to Austin to check it out, he was repairing a water leak when I talked to him or something, but, that road is starting to go away, and somebody catches their wheel in it, and they probably gonna end up upside down. So I just happened to think about that, and I haven't said anything to him, but Austin really knows about it, it's the thing that was his heart, yeah. I would say he is so jumping on the spot with stuff. So he was, for my personal feeling, he was a good person. He answers the phone, he answers your questions, and it's been very good, so. Thank you, Austin.
Thank you, Ms. O'Loughlin, appreciate that. Commissioner zone report, or commissioner reports by zone. Commissioner Eckert, you have something you would like to address?
Yes, at the last meeting, the guidelines for the request from the Food Truck Wednesday event for selling an alcoholic, based dessert. They wanted some added guidelines, so I sent an email to Lee, and I don't know why he didn't include it in this part of it, but the Food Truck Wednesday event, which is a city event, would like the city commission's permission to allow the vendors meeting the requirements to sell alcoholic treats and drinks. The content would be 6% or less alcohol by volume. One of the vendors has a wine-based treat that they would like to sell to residents 21 years and older. And other vendors may request the same in the future, we don't know. This would allow the venue manager the discretion to give permission without having come before the commission for each individual request. So this is letting the venue requesting the commission to permit the venue to have this authority to have the alcohol beverage. The current one there that would like to sell the beverage, by the time they get done mixing together, it's actually 1 or 2% by volume after it's all mixed together. I don't know, as the requester, I don't know if I'm allowed to make the motion to do that, or?
Yeah, you can.
I make a motion that the commission give permission for the Food Truck Wednesday event to sell alcoholic treats or drinks, which just falls in the guidelines of the ordinances, which they have to come and ask the commission for it.
And that's just for that Wednesday night event?
Just for that Wednesday night event only.
But that's a recurring event on Wednesday night.
Yes.
So just clarity. Okay.
Can you restate that?
Yes, I hope you can.
If the Food Truck Wednesday event, or I make the motion, the Food Truck Wednesday event, have permission from the commission to allow vendors meeting requirements to sell alcoholic treats and drinks with a content of 6% or less alcohol by volume.
That allows for most beers as well.
I mean, they have approved events in the park before to sell alcohol beverages, so.
We don't have a second as of yet. Mike, before you even, I know Commissioner Rutledge, you're thinking about whether or not a second for sake of discussion. My concern, this is a relatively controversial decision, and I would hate to, I believe it is, selling alcohol in the park is whether or not to allow it for an event ongoing into the future, not just a single event, but an ongoing event. I think that has some controversy. It's not, I do controversial, it's not like we're deciding on Roe v. Wade or anything like that. But
past practice.
It is. My point is that we are we're missing two commissioners right now, the way we discuss it and so I'm a little bit concerned. We have the right, we have a quorum, and we can vote on it, but it might be better to table this so we'll have a full commission.
And I would like to get some citizen input as well before I make the decision. If we could bring this back next month, we could fill out.
Well, in that case, the motion dies for lack of a second.
No, we can table it.
And so it is officially, sort of, unofficially tabled. It's not the exact right, but it's close enough. I just for discussion's sake, because we don't have to have a motion to discuss, but I'm hesitant to give homes, well, I'll have to have some more input on that as well. I'm hesitant to give ongoing permission to have alcoholic beverages, served in the park on a regular basis. The one-time thing being brought before the commission for a single event was always what I understood. This is more for an event that's ongoing through the future. That's my hesitation.
It's a constant event, but it is an event, and it is a city event.
It is, and it's not an unreasonable thing. It's really not. That's my hesitation, not my no. That's not my reason for my no, because I haven't had a no, but that's my thought.
For just future thoughts and everything else, if we ever do a flower and wine show or a arts and wine show or anything like that for a citywide event, the same issues want to come up.
I agree.
But that's why the city's ordinance that says that anybody that wants to sell alcoholic beverages in city property must get permission from the city commission. That's why it was brought.
Yeah, and it's a reasonable request. My other concern was that we're vesting an authority in the event coordinator as to approve individual vendors. That's a little bit.
It's only for that event.
Yeah, I know, I get that. I get
Okay,
that.
but
And I get the distinction.
You're trying to add reasons for
No.
turning it down by
No,
saying, well, we're investing authority into. No, you're allowing the event with the discretion of the manager to decide as long as the content's low enough. I mean,
I'm not trying to be wishy-washy. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to say.
Stay on the fence.
I'm not trying to say on the fence. I'm trying to share my concerns with you. And I'm not saying these are the reasons I'm going to vote no. I'm really not. Because I'm leaning towards allowing, I think it's reasonable for the city to allow, alcoholic beverages to be sold at certain events. I think that's a very reasonable thing. So I'm not saying I'm going to vote no. I'm just sharing my concerns with you. And it's not even a choice we're having to make right now. It's just, probably should have kept my mouth shut, but I have trouble doing that sometimes. So anyway, we'll discuss it when we have a full board. Thank you for bringing that to us. It is a legitimate concern. I think you'll find, never mind. Item B, was this also brought to you by that, or to us by your commissioner?
Yes, this is actually something that's been going on since about 2016 or so in the state of Florida, when they were when they were researching how to improve the water quality of the springs in the aquifer, and they did some research and found out where most of the contaminants were coming from, and a big portion of it was coming from septic tanks. So the state took it about 2 or 3 years or so to evaluate the springs in the state of Florida and the waterways, and determining a program or a way to protect the springs and the aquifer. And they came up with the Springs and Aquifer Protection Act, which establishing a restoration plan known as the Basin Management Action Plans, and you'll hear people call them the BMAPs. Well, they did that, and some of the people protested against it. Volusia County was included in the ones that challenged the BMAPs in the areas the challenge is for an unknown period of time. So, and that's why I say this hydrology information is going to play a big part in it. What they came down to, and some of the cities and municipalities went ahead and started implementing procedures and everything on it. The other ones, like Volusia County, challenged the B map. And one of the reasons they challenged it is my guess, because I haven't had a chance to find out who did it in Volusia County, is because of the hydrology flows, Lake Helen doesn't go primarily to Blue Springs. Lake Helen kind of goes towards Lake Monroe with a small piece going towards the direction of the springs, but I don't think it all the way goes all the way to the springs. And but so Lake Helen was not considered into the primary area. And the what do they call it?
Priority focus area.
Yeah, priority focus area, the Springs priority focus area, which DeLand, Orange City, and Deltona were put, or the western side of Deltona was put into that requirement. But those areas, most of those areas are already serviced by sewer systems. So most of those areas already meet the requirements. Lake Helen was put into a secondary system that they're not pushing for yet. And I wanted to get us to see if we get a workshop together to get ahead of the ball and come up with, what we're going to allow in this city, because we're primarily a septic tank area, and they give 3 different types of septic tank provisions for if they ever start enforcing on us, we can go to it, or if we decide to start the ordinance on our own, follow these guidelines, and have our septic tanks meet these requirements for denitrification in the wastewater. So I wanted us to see about getting some time together when we could get a workshop, get the citizens' input into it, come up with something to be able to get the enforcement going now, because even though the state's looking at the spring feed, the spring basins and everything else, we need to look at the general water, no matter where it's at, the hydrology area, the whole hydrology area, the aquifer, the lakes, the rivers, the streams, the springs, and all the water areas that are on the surface and the subsurface of the ground to protect it from contamination. So if we can get a workshop, start working on this to get ahead of the law, I think it would be very beneficial for Lake Helen and residents.
Mr. Rogers, do you have any comments on this?
No, it's perfect. I've done a little bit of research of my own as well, and I also listened to Jeff Browder, one of the meetings. I can't remember the League of Cities meetings, and he was telling us about how nitrogen overloading was killing seagrass. And so that's when I started looking at this. And I'm sorry. I think we agreed to revisit this in the workshop.
Mr. City Administrators, if you want to share some of what, I know we talked about what the St. John's Board manager told us, or something like that. Share that information with me again, so that.
Well, Roger summed it up very well. There's a state law in 2016 that said all the springs in the state need to be protected. Blue Spring is our closest one. And out of that came a study that included the areas that Roger described, that are now known as the priority areas. I talked to the health department, they have no plans now, nor do they know if they ever will have to require the super septic tank systems, but it is a possibility. And 54% of the nitrates coming out of Blue Springs are supposedly traceable back to septic systems, which is obviously a significant number. And I don't think it'd be bad, even from an education standpoint, to know what's going on with the springs and with the septic systems, since we're 100% septic in this community. and we're becoming very, very weak in that, as a city. So I would be worth the educational time, if nothing else, to know how unique we are and how it may impact us in the future.
My hesitation would be that we aren't experts. We can certainly read, I enjoyed reading this information that was provided in our packet. I really did. It's for y'all's sake, and the packet is public information, but there was a lot of information in this that was really quite good. But I would personally would really hesitate requiring citizens to upgrade to the denitrification type of septic.
The state law.
The state law has that.
The state law has a grandfathering clause in it, in which any current active septic system stays the way it is until either the tank or the drain field has to be replaced. Any change in what's currently there, then they have to meet the requirements according to the state law.
I understand.
So that covers a lot of people for at least 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I would be very hesitant to increase that.
Catches in new construction though.
Yeah, I understand. I would be hesitant to create a higher level of demand than the experts are requiring. Not that it's the wrong thing to do, but because I agree that springs and our aquifer needs protecting. But to protect at a higher level than the experts are suggesting at this time, at least, would be a very high bar for me to set.
Which experts?
Well, fair enough.
Because the state experts are saying it needs to be done.
But
And
the
the University of Florida says it needs to be done.
But the requiring agencies are not requiring anything.
No, because they're going in a systematic process, so we can either wait for that process to reach us 100 years from now, or we can go ahead and step up and be environmentally proactive and establish the same requirements the state now requires in our own ordinances to show that we are environmentally proactive in our city, that we're willing to start meeting these requirements that the state has set aside.
I understand that.
And this whole thing started with the Puget Sound in Oregon, and that one is more in depth and a lot of information in it than the Florida one.
Okay. Well, I'm just sharing my concerns because only place we can share our concerns is here on the dais. I can't talk to Roger about this privately and share my concerns before we have a workshop or anything like that. So this is the only place I can do it. That's why I go ahead and share stuff here that sometimes is a little off topic, but this is our only place to discuss. So those are my concerns. I am very ecologically concerned for our aquifer. Ecologically concerned. I'm personally concerned for the ecology of our state and our aquifer. I'm hesitant to require additional things of the citizens above what the state requiring agencies that are in place to do that. I'm hesitant to go above and beyond that. But I would be happy to discuss this in a workshop setting. If we want to put together a workshop, I can be educated at the very least, and I can probably be persuaded, or perhaps be persuaded to do that. When would you like to have a workshop on that? Just sometime in this coming month, or?
As soon as feasible, or as soon as everybody's available. The sooner the better.
I'll get together with the city administrator and we'll see if we can put that together sometime in the near future.
And I wonder if we could get someone that has more knowledge to present some information, and I think Jeff Brown at that Monday, to really see, he might have some suggestions for us.
Email.
There's a list of contacts and some of the paperwork I got on local people that from the universities and stuff like that, different state departments that can come down and do it.
I have a personal friend who's a very high level marine biologists that stay and study the springs and their outflows and trying to put together some really high level stuff. I imagine I can persuade him to come and talk with us. I mean, he's one of the top people in the state on this. So, yeah, but there's stuff we can learn. We'll make that happen. Thank you. Item 13, city administrator reports.
Well, you didn't finish the rest of the commission's lesson.
Oh,
You
I'm
started
sorry.
with me, you jumped there.
Commissioner Costello, you're right. I just went through the printed ones. Mr. Rutledge.
I don't have anything, thank you.
Well, that was.
Can I finish a couple of dates?
Yes, of course you may.
Pull up my calendar, I use my phone. June 11th at the Massey James Youth Center, they're having a veterans banquet. So any of the veterans in town, it starts about 11 o'clock, noonish, sometime around there. They won't tell me what the menu is, but they hinted at a couple items. I know the Greens are involved in it. Well, I heard a lot of different things. So, any of the veterans in Lake Elements would like to come out and enjoy that. That's going to be on June 11th, about 11 o'clock at the Massey James Youth Center. And for those car enthusiasts, May 30th, we have the Veterans Memorial Day Veterans Car Show. Come out and enjoy it. They're going to have a lot of cars. We're going to put on one of our ceremonies. No, we're not doing breakfast on that day. We're going to be busy getting things ready. But that's a Monday on May 30th, and we're going to recognize some of our veterans that have passed away in the past couple of years, and honor them with the ceremony at the thing. So come out and enjoy it.
What time?
I'm thinking it starts around 10, but I have to dig up the flyer and find out for sure.
And that's what was the date of that again, one more time?
May 30th, Memorial Day.
I have a couple of items for at large. Lake Elements Cleanup Day this Saturday, starting at what time, Austin?
8 o'clock.
At 8 o'clock. We'll be meeting by the Mitchell Sports Complex in that area. I will be cooking pancakes. I'm really actually pretty good at it, having raised $3. They think I did anyway. Also, I wanted to announce the signs we've seen around town for Tony was here. That's been an ongoing thing for quite a long time, recognizing one of the outstanding citizens of the community and the impact he had on construction and revitalizing the city in so many instances. So I just want to honor him once again from the dais. Tony Troy Day we have declared this month, and we appreciate the impact he had on our city. And we are done with Commissioner's own reports. City Administrator report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have two items. One's on the agenda and one I want to just verbally give you a good commission on. The first one, and the most important one, is our police chief has now passed the 6-month evaluation. In accordance with our agreement, he is entitled to a 5% raise in salary. I can only ask you for it, I can't do it myself. So you've got the evaluation in your packet, and I will recommend a 5% increase for Chief Mullins.
Got a motion?
Make a motion that we.
Retroactive to his 6-month anniversary, which is somewhere in April.
Make a motion that we accept the administrator's recommendation on Chief Mullins.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Eckert, seconded by Commissioner Rutledge to approve the city administrator's recommendation for a salary increase at 6-month anniversary of Chief Mullins. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you for your first 6 months as chief. Appreciate it. You're doing a great job.
The second one is the city has been undergoing what's called the CCNA, the Competitive Consultant Negotiation Act process, which is designed to allow us to retain architects and engineers without going through the bidding process. In fact, it's in lieu of the bidding process. We have done that now. We have received 2 proposals that actually request for qualifications. I've appointed, the law provides that I need to appoint a staff committee. I've done that. The committee has met, and we only have 2. Normally, if we had multiple numbers, we would have interviews of no less than 3, but we don't have that. And we really don't have the need for the interviews because we know both of the firms. So at this point, I think it's appropriate if you would authorize us to begin negotiations on contracts with both of the firms, 2 engineering firms, Pond Incorporated out of Jacksonville, the other out of Orlando, and I should wish you remember your name. Yeah, we both know it. But it's a good firm, you know that. And when we're negotiating contracts, we're not negotiating dollars. We're simply negotiating cost per hour with each of them, and then when we have a project, we will sit down with one or both, with one at a time, and see if we come to agreement on cost. And if you cannot come to agreement on that one, then you can go to number 2. But if you're unhappy with number 2, you can't go back to number 1. So it's a tricky process. But anyway, so that's my recommendation, that we enter into those continuing contracts with both of the engineering firms. So we'll have 2 to choose from in the future. The one at Pond is definitely the one that their Wayne Scott is with now. He has been our city engineer for about 4 years now. Obviously, he'd be the one we rely on the most, but the other firm would have perhaps some specialty in the future. And so we would seek them out first. But anyway, so that's where we are.
You do not need any specific action from us on that. You're just informing us where we are.
Your consensus, your understanding. I'll bring both of the contracts back to you as much as you want to do.
I concur.
Negotiate.
Yeah, there's not a lot of negotiation in the process, but I use the word loosely. But that's it.
Thank you for bringing us up to speed on that, where we are in that process. Ms. O'Loughlin, would you like to speak to us one last time?
I know, I'm sorry. I should. Dale Washington, Quincy Road. When we talked about the road, like, I walk my dogs like sometimes 11 o'clock at night. And I think what the truck was, we have that new septic business right down the street from us. And these trucks look like they were decorated for Christmas. They were huge, 2 of them going by at it was either 10:30 or 11 at night. I'm gonna have to start paying more close attention. But I think those trucks are what's tearing up that road. Because now we notice more stuff on them. But these trucks were huge, I mean, really big. And they were all lit up and everything. This was like 10:30, 11 at night. And I tried to look down and it looked like they turned right down there. I mean, at least their trucks have slowed down a little bit. But they're going up and down that road, and there's a lot, that road, McKinsey Road's not gonna be able to handle it. We've already started to have some issues with it, so, thank you very much.
Lee,
Oh, wait.
email you sent us this evening that you wanted to discuss.
Oh, to discuss the, yes. I'm sorry. Last meeting, the commission asked us to come up with some ideas on how we would best solicit thoughts from the citizenry on how to spend $1 million that we get from the American Rescue Plan. We've come up with it, and I will tell you, it's not a perfect system. We've come up with the idea of doing a first-class letter, a business envelope with an enclosed postcard, detailing some of the suggestions that are in the email that the staff has come up with, the commission, and giving blank lines for additional comments or additional suggestions we did not include, and then asking the citizen to check off on a postcard basically the ideas they liked or didn't like, or whatever, and then send that back to us. There are costs involved. The actual mailing lists for the cheap part are free, and we've concerned ourselves. At first, we went to the supervisor elections, and we have a free list. There's 2,293 active voters in the community. We have a list of customers in the city on our water system of approximately 1,500. And we have to go through and manually avoid duplications from those to make sure we reach every household. But it would cost us approximately several $1,000s to do it. I will tell you from my experience in the past, our letters, unless we really do something fancy, in glowing yellow ink, or it'll be considered junk mail, it goes, our response rate will not be good, is what I'm trying to say. But it's something we should try. Again, I don't know that we're gonna get a great deal of similarity of thought coming back, but if we don't, we'll always have criticism if we didn't try. And so that's what we're working on, and I wish Commissioner Powell was here, because he had gone down us about email. He's not, that didn't work very well. But we can put it off to the next meeting if you like, and talk about having Vassal's here as well. Or no, he's not going to be here. No, he will be.
I don't know that we need to put that off. One other thing that crossed my mind is that you can also do, I know I did this for my campaign, you can do a mailing to each active address through the post office. They just send one to each active address. That was the cheapest we found for our campaign. Because it avoided first class. It was a bulk rate by doing that. I will say, I've heard in the past that bulk rate, or bulk mailings like that, if you get a 2% response, it's a fantastic. I mean, this will be a very low response. But I think spending, $1 million of people's money deserves at least as much.
It's a very unique time in our history.
I don't think we'll ever be here. I don't think we'll be here again. And spending $1,000 to $1,500, which is what it looks like it may end up costing us, it does $3,500.
Well, that includes the printing now.
Oh, printing.
Yeah, and we've been talking about that internally. We may want to have a letter printed commercially, but maybe we'll just do all of it on our Xerox.
Either way, it costs.
Yeah.
So,
the Xeroxes today will do something virtually printed quality.
So that would be 0.03% of our total funds, or 0.03% of the ARPA funds we'd be using on communication. I don't think that's an unreasonable level.
I haven't done that.
Ms. Rice?
May I make a suggestion? The back of our water bills are blank. If the language is legible and able to fit in there, that'd be a good way to save money on our mailing.
Okay, yeah, we could include some of that as well, even if we did the other. We could do that as well, for virtually no cost. I don't know how difficult it would be to print on those, but we'll look at that.
Well, you need to have something going out with the explanation and the suggestions, and then you need to have something come back, and the water bill goes out, nothing comes back.
Well, hopefully when we send out water bills, something comes back. I'm just kidding, that was a joke.
We had 80 from that this last time.
So what you're looking for is something similar to when we send out the letters of the water quality. As a letter that explains.
Yeah.
So do we want to give them a consensus or not giving a consensus on proceeding with this expense?
I chose a question, I wasn't sure if that included, an online way to reach people, that they could provide the feedback in an online way.
That, in the letter, we would propose going to the website and emailing, all of those things electronically. But so many people don't visit the electronic Facebooks or websites. And so we want to make sure we reach everybody. But yeah, oh, absolutely, but, you know, they don't have to mail it back, if they send emails or they.
We would probably put a QR code that sent to the appropriate place on our website to, you know, give a suggestion.
I think there's I might be calling it the wrong thing, there's like SurveyMonkey or something like that.
Oh,
So you can just click, it'd be super simple for people. And I don't know if there's cost associated with that, but I know if it's up to me, now this is just one on me, I'm more apt to respond online than to respond via postcard.
And if you have, there's a certain number of questions, you can't, if you go above that, people poop out on it. But I don't remember, it's not a very large number, like 10 questions that are usually answered. Above that, they get tired.
I get tired by about the third question.
But anyway, if you don't mind, we'll continue with this then, and we'll keep you advised, obviously.
I think it is a worthwhile thing to try and get input from the public. I do think
It is following everything that we asked you to do, so.
Well, it's, yeah, and Dominique had an interesting idea, we're going for the registered voters, she's a registered voter, she'd get one. If we use the name, just the name list of the name for the utility system, she would not get one because she rents and the landlord pays for it. So you could miss her, so we got to combine, we got to merge those lists together. There's probably a couple of other extreme situations that we haven't even thought of, hence the electronic. That's another third level to be able to reach people. I'm still not optimistic we're gonna have a response, but.
And I don't know that we need a tremendous response. We have lots of good ideas on how to spend money.
Oh, that's, yeah.
I mean, I know you know the needs of the city as well.
Yeah.
I say that somewhat sarcastically, but the city has many needs.
This is a great opportunity to demonstrate, I mean, this is basically free money, and do things that are very visible to the community so they can see what we've done with their money.
Well, it's money that they stole from us initially, and now they're sending it back to us, telling us we have to spend it within this time frame. We have no choice.
At least it didn't.
So in that sense, yes, it's free.
Yeah, at least it didn't tell us how to spend it, but you're right, time frame.
Well, they started to tell us how to
They
spend
did.
it, but they
Absolutely.
got too complicated with it.
And Zach got us around that. Well, that's it.
Thank you for proceeding on that. We do want
We'll
to.
keep you advised and proceed.
Anything additional? Commissioners?
If you want more than just pancakes, you can stop by the American Legion. We're doing biscuits and gravy with scrambled eggs, sausage and bacon. We're also doing pancakes with scrambled eggs, sausage and bacon. So you can channel between the two pancake makers at the American Legion or his.
His are free.
I will say on the cleanup day, we do have the option of,
We use the same ingredients. We put that vanilla czar pancake.
there is the option of disposing of toxic materials. The Waste Pro is working with us. So if you have like old paints, old pesticides, things like that are difficult or dangerous to get rid of, this is a good opportunity. That's hence the name Lake Elm Cleanup Day. We want this to be a nice, clean community. It's been amazing some of the response we've gotten in past years. So please.
Any old tires laying around the yard to reduce the number of mosquitoes, bring those out there to the disposal site.
And thank you to Austin for organizing all this for us. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.
Yes.
Well, no, because.